My master returned from his travels down the mountain, bringing back a woman with him. He said she was to be my junior sister disciple. One day I discovered this junior sister was actually a demonic cultivator who fed on human essence. I immediately reported this matter to our master, yet my master publicly accused me of being consumed by jealousy and harming fellow disciples. He stripped me of my cultivation before the crowd and destroyed my physical form, then secretly refined my spiritual essence into vital energy to aid my junior sister's cultivation. Only then did I realize the master had known her true identity all along. Given a second chance at life, I immediately switched masters on the very day he returned. The flawless sect rejoiced as immortal Venerable Xander returned from his travels, for he was one of only 2 Tribulation Transcendence elders in the entire sect. Immortal Venerable Xander actually brought back a woman this time. Who knew that ice-cold men could actually fall in love? Nonsense, I'm just his disciple. The crowd turned to me in unison, their eyes flickering with mixed emotions, all because I'm immortal Venerable Xander's sole disciple, though he essentially abandoned me right after taking me in, leaving to train in the mortal world. This was my first time seeing him, or rather, my first encounter since rebirth. In my past life, I exposed that woman as a demonic cultivator, only to have Venerable Xander strip me of my cultivation, destroy my physical form, and deliver my soul to her for refinement. 1. The agony of having my soul torn apart still haunts my mind. In the grand hall of the sect, the moment he returned, the sect master rebuked him. Outrageous! How dare a mere mortal seek entry into our immortal sect? Xander and the woman stood in the grand hall, facing off against the sect leader. Violet once saved my life in the mortal realm. Without her, I wouldn't be here today, immortal Venerable Xander declared stubbornly, vowing, I will nurture Violet into a peerless genius the world has never seen. The sect leader roared in anger. What about Arwen then? All these years, have you ever cared for her? Have you ever taught her anything? I am Arwen. As my master, Xander never taught me a single thing. He even begrudged me the most basic cultivation resources. In my past life, out of respect for the teacher-student bond, I harbored no resentment whatsoever, for I believe that a teacher for a day is a father for life. This time, I want to choose a different master. Arwen is exceptionally gifted and can learn on her own, but Violet is different, immortal Venerable Xander declared unapologetically, showing no regard for my future prospects. She's just a mortal. Cultivation will be incredibly difficult for her. Naturally, I must devote myself to her training. I trust Arwen will understand her master's position. Xander's gaze shifted to me. It forced me to step forward from the crowd. Seeing my approach, Xander pushed his luck. Arwen, come greet your junior sister. I remained still and asked calmly, Master, does this mean you'll no longer teach me or allocate any cultivation resources to me? I shot back. Xander's face darkened. My words had clearly struck a nerve. What kind of master doesn't teach his disciple anything? The great hall fell completely silent. Violet, who'd been hiding behind Xander, spoke up first with glistening tears. Am I causing trouble? I'm sorry. I can always go back to living alone at the mountain's foot. I may be an orphan with no parents, but I can take care of myself. Don't need your pity. With that, she actually turned to leave. But would Xander let her go? Not a chance. He yanked Violet back and roared at me. Arwen, look what you've done. I just got back and you're already turning comrades against each other, with conduct like yours. How could I possibly teach you properly? After his outburst, Xander looked at me with utter disappointment. In his eyes, I was nothing but a complete failure of a disciple. Master, please don't say that. Senior sister didn't mean to. Violet sobbed pitifully in Xander's arms, her tears unstoppable. Seeing my aggressive demeanor, Xander's gaze toward me grew even more disdainful. Watching their coordinated performance, I couldn't help but sneer. Since immortal Xander can't teach me properly, I'll just find myself another mentor. With that declaration, I defiantly knelt before the entire assembly, prostrating myself toward the sect leader's direction. This disciple pays respects to master. Silence. The crowd stared at me in stunned silence, utterly speechless. Recovering from his shock, Xander glared at me with disgust. A treacherous disciple who disrespects elders. Do you really think the sect leader would want someone like you, nestled in his arms? Violet shot me a covert glance brimming with smug satisfaction. With condescending pity, he looked down at my kneeling form and added, You might as well get up. The cultivation world values respect for masters above all. No one would take in someone like you. How about admitting your mistake? I might reluctantly take you as an outer disciple. I cowed out on the ground in silence, awaiting the sect master's approval. As a lightning-attributed single spiritual root genius who reached foundation establishment at 16, every sect outside was clamoring to take me as their disciple. I continued shouting toward the sect master, This disciple pays respects to master. As I cowed out again, the sect master finally snapped out of it and helped me up. Xander's sneering voice still rang in my ears, Sect master, are you really taking in someone with such disgraceful conduct and no respect for elders? I looked up into the sect master's gleaming eyes as he declared, "Yes, absolutely, from this day forward, you shall be my personal disciple." I could practically feel the temperature drop several degrees around Xander. He ground his teeth and spat, "Well played," deliberately opposing me. "Are you? Just wait until the Immortal Sect tournament. I'll have Violet reach the Golden Core realm." Mark my words, my eyes darkened. In my past life, Violet did indeed reach the Golden Core realm during the tournament, but only by devouring my soul essence to get there. Violet tugged at Xander's sleeve with starry-eyed admiration. "I believe in you. You can do this." Xander ate it right up. With a tender smile, he took Violet's hand and led her away. He shot me a venomous glare before leaving. "Seems we've gone from potential master and disciple to sworn enemies." The sect leader was still basking in the joy of accepting me as his disciple. Meanwhile, my gaze wandered until it settled on an inconspicuous junior disciple. This was the very disciple whom Violet had drained of life essence in my past life. I'd stumbled upon his corpse too late to intervene, to prevent tragedy. I addressed the sect leader. "Master, I'd like a golden light talisman." My dear disciple, it's just a golden light talisman. Take all my worldly possessions." With that, the sect leader pulled his spatial ring right off his finger and handed it to me. "Ask if you need more. Just focus on your cultivation." As I took the ring, my heart stirred. Such kindness was unheard of in my past life. Gathering my thoughts, I slipped the ring onto my finger and handed a golden talisman to the young disciple. The disciple flushed with disbelief. "I couldn't possibly accept this." I pressed it into his hands regardless. Survival came first. After settling these matters, I followed the sect leader back to his cavern abode to cultivate. That night, a blood-curdling scream shattered my meditation. A disciple came running in panic, shouting, sect leader, murder, someone's been killed." After changing clothes, I stepped out and stopped him. Glancing at the sect leader's cave abode, I knew he was currently attempting his great ascension breakthrough. "The master is in seclusion. What happened?" I asked, feigning ignorance. "Eldest senior sister, that disciple immortal venerable Xander brought back has killed someone." His shocked outcry woke everyone up. Now the whole sect witnessed it, not just me. "Who exactly are you trying to silence?" "Xander." When I arrived, Violet was tied to a pillar, drenched in blood, her exposed skin marred by eerie black patterns, the unmistakable mark of a dark cultivator. The disciples were clamoring for her execution. The injured junior disciple on the ground clutched his neck. Looking at me with gratitude, he knew he'd be dead if not for my golden light talisman. "Eldest senior sister, how should we deal with this person?" I smiled coldly. "Practicing forbidden arts and harming fellow disciples, death is the only fitting punishment." The disciples obeyed my command, summoning spiritual flames to burn Violet alive. Strapped to the pillar and facing imminent death, she cried out in panic, "Master, save me." Violet's desperate cries indeed summoned immortal Lord Xander. The moment he arrived, he freed Violet from her restraints. Seeing Violet drenched in blood, Xander roared in fury, "How dare you abduct my disciple? Is this grand sect so petty that it cannot tolerate a single mortal?" Violet found her protector and buried herself in Xander's embrace, sobbing uncontrollably. "Master, they want to kill me. I'm terrified." Hearing this, Xander held her tenderly, his hand patting her back in steady rhythm. This was far from how a normal master-disciple relationship should appear. A flicker of mockery crossed my eyes as I stated coolly, "Elder Xander, your disciple practices forbidden arts, consuming human essence for cultivation. By sect law, she merits immediate execution." Xander's icy gaze swept over us as he shielded Violet in his arms. "Where's your proof?" Now he demands evidence. In our past life, he executed me without trial while the sect master was in seclusion, all to protect Violet. When the sect master emerged to confront him, Xander exploited a loophole and fled with Violet. Since then, the Xander sect has borne the infamy of driving away an Ascension Realm immortal. The sect master developed inner demons over this incident and perished during his heavenly tribulation. The last remnants of my consciousness were utterly consumed in that moment, to condemn Violet without evidence. "I'm utterly disappointed in your flawless sect." Xander wore a dejected expression, as if our sect were some petty organization bullying him and his disciple. I pulled over my junior brother who was clutching his wound and said to Xander, "Elder, look at his injuries. Those 2 puncture wounds are proof she's been draining human essence." The junior brother nodded like pounding garlic. Xander merely glanced at it and sneered, "Nonsense. How do we know this isn't some trick you've concocted to frame Violet?" I channeled spiritual energy into the damaged golden light talisman. Activating the time reversal technique, in an instant, a projection of the recent events materialized midair. The junior disciple delivering supplies was suddenly ambushed by a white blur. Had it not been for his life-saving talisman, that strike would have been fatal. The scene shifted, revealing Violet's transformed appearance as a demonic cultivator. "Elder, with irrefutable evidence before us, will you still shield your disciple?" I asked weakly. My current strength falls short of casting time reversal, leaving me completely defenseless now. Seeing Xander's livid expression, I knew his fury had reached its breaking point. What an imposing senior sister you are. Is it just because I brought Violet back that you're jealous of her, that I could overlook, but harming Violet, that I'll never forgive? Immortal Lord Xander unleashed terrifying spiritual pressure. The tribulation transcendence realms might bearing down on me, Arwen. As the pure sect's head disciple, you've shown ruthless cruelty and framed your fellow disciples. By the sect master's authority, I shall execute you where you stand. Already weakened beyond measure, I stood no chance against the crushing pressure of a tribulation stage cultivator's aura. Within minutes, the overwhelming force drove me to my knees, yet my head remained unbowed as I declared with defiant dignity, "Immortal Venerable Xander, this disciple rejects your accusations." My gaze remained steely as I met Xander's murderous glare, tasting nothing but bitter irony in this moment. The righteous sect's paramount leader, a tribulation stage sovereign, now you'd slaughter your own prodigy for some demonic cultivator. I pressed my advantage, though I held no illusions of awakening his conscience, but to expose this matter publicly, making Xander the target of public condemnation in this lifetime. Xander's furious expression softened slightly as his emotions gradually stabilized. The frail Violet in his arms pleaded in a weak voice, "Master, don't blame senior sister, she didn't mean to." Before she could finish, she collapsed weakly into Xander's arms and fell silent. Xander gasped in shock, then after a moment of grief, drew his soulbound sword and lunged at me. He gave none of us even a moment to react. Even I couldn't dodge in time. The blade pierced my shoulder blade instantly, sending waves of pain through my body. A pained grunt escaped my lips as a trickle of blood seeped from the corner of my mouth. Consider this a warning. Harm Violet again, and the consequences will be far worse. With that, Xander carried Violet back to his mountain abode. He never explained why Violet practiced forbidden cultivation techniques, as one of only 2 tribulation transcendents in the flawless sect. He answered to none but the sect master himself, watching his retreating figure. I finally collapsed, my strength utterly spent as darkness claimed me. "Senior sister," my junior disciples hurriedly helped me up and escorted me back to my cave abode for proper recuperation. Fortunately, as the sect leader's personal disciple, I had unrestricted access to the sect's most potent healing elixirs. Within a month, my injuries had completely healed without a trace. My innate talent had always been exceptional, so I wisely avoided provoking Xander and his disciples during this period. After that night's incident, the disciples' reverence for immortal Venerable Xander has noticeably diminished. Meanwhile, I've been dutifully managing the sect affairs in place of our secluded sect master. I know the sect master will emerge during the immortal assembly, but without achieving the great ascension realm. That's why Xander dared to abandon our sect so brazenly in our past life. He even managed to tarnish flawless sect's reputation as treacherous villains, but with evidence of Violet harming fellow disciples in this lifetime, such disgrace won't repeat itself. As the top prodigy of the flawless sect, all cultivation resources naturally flowed to me. I even had dedicated alchemists crafting elixirs tailored to my cultivation needs. My cultivation advanced by leaps and bounds, and I was on the verge of breaking through to the Golden Core realm. On the eve of my seclusion, after settling the sect's trivial affairs, the person I'd been deliberately avoiding came to see me again. Before my cave abode knelt a woman in white robes, her face deathly pale and her expression utterly drained. She crawled toward me on her knees, clutching my robe hem as she pleaded, "Senior sister, I beg you, please don't reveal what happened. I never meant to practice forbidden arts. You know how hard cultivation is for a mortal like me. I only resorted to those techniques out of desperation. I couldn't bear to disappoint our master." As I studied her desperate expression, a persistent question gnawed at me. Why does this woman always have it out for me? In my past life, fine, they were just using me as a scapegoat, but this lifetime, her practice of forbidden arts is common knowledge in the sect. Now she comes begging for my help. Even her master's intervention would be useless, so I merely glanced at her before turning to return to my cave for cultivation. Breaking through to the Golden Core stage, there's absolutely no room for error. Just as I stepped into my cave abode, Violet's eyes flashed crimson, a dark tendril shot from her arm, lancing straight toward the back of my skull. Good thing I'd kept my guard up, her ambush failed. I whirled around as the inky thread hovered before my face, dissolving into nothingness in an instant. Violet's delicate frame suddenly radiated seduction. With a sultry gaze, she purred, "Quick reflexes. Pity you dismissed all your cave guards for seclusion. Even if I strike now, not even the gods would know." In an instant, Violet unleashed her Golden Core cultivation, accompanied by an eerie aura, a demonic cultivator. I narrowed my eyes, concealing the shock in their depths. Violet from the past life shouldn't have reached the golden core stage by now. What did she obtain to accelerate her cultivation at such an insane pace? But I'm certain only Xander knows the truth behind this anomaly. In our previous life, he wasn't surprised when discovering Violet's murders. He must have known her identity as a demonic cultivator all along. Does this mean without my intervention, Xander would have sought other victims' life essence to fuel Violet's cultivation? My expression turned frostier as Violet's assault came mid-thought, fingering my spatial ring, a smirk played on my lips. Golden core realm or not, I've got treasures to spare. The clash erupted instantly, though my cave's barrier rendered the battle invisible to low-level cultivators, but Xander would undoubtedly see everything unfolding here. I deliberately held back, resorting to flinging countless treasures to fend off Violet's assaults. Surrender now, and I'll make your death quick. Violet fought with reckless abandon, her earlier frailty gone. Now she grew fiercer with each strike. She had fully embraced her dark cultivation, her features twisted into eerie allure, her attacks laced with vampiric threads that drained lifeblood. Dodging her attack once more, I feigned exhaustion, dropping to one knee while clutching my chest, staring at her in feigned shock. "Aren't you afraid your master will find out?" I asked pointedly, already knowing the answer. Find out. So what if she does? Violet cackled wildly, her fingers curling into claws as she lunged straight for my skull. This time, with you gone, no one in the flawless sect will dare stand in my way. Her venomous words still echoed in my ears at this critical moment. A faint glow shielded my body, completely deflecting Violet's attack. She stared at me in disbelief, frustration dripping from her voice. "How are you still alive? How dare you harm my disciple?" Upon hearing this, Violet instantly reverted to her usual frail demeanor, her trembling body collapsing to the ground as she began sobbing quietly. I rose slowly as a wizened figure flashed overhead, landing before Violet with a menacing glare. Abandoning her pitiful act, Violet gasped in shock. "You dare leave seclusion during your great ascension breakthrough? For cultivators, closed-door meditation lasts at least a year or two, sometimes centuries, let alone when attempting a major realm breakthrough." I calmly approached the sect leader and murmured, "Have you ever seen a master who doesn't leave a trace of their spiritual consciousness on their disciple?" Probably only that bastard Xander. Back when I first became the sect leader's disciple, he implanted a strand of his spiritual consciousness in me to ensure he could intervene during my moments of crisis. Though that's because my consciousness remained intact when my previous self was refined into an essence. I know Violet's cultivation techniques and weaknesses like the back of my hand. With my current strength, I could fight Violet to a mutual standstill despite her golden core stage, but with my master by my side, why should I put myself through such misery? When immortal Xander struck before, it wasn't lethal, that's why my master didn't notice, but now, you're genuinely trying to kill me, I said with venomous sarcasm. My dissatisfaction with Xander and his disciple grows by the day. Violet's face darkened. While she could play dumb to fool other disciples, the flawless sex leader was a genuine tribulation stage cultivator. Combined with the earlier battle, Violet couldn't possibly conceal her demonic cultivation aura. I let out a cold chuckle, then the sect leader's voice rang in my ears. "A demonic cultivator, sneaking into our flawless sect and slaughtering our disciples, you deserve death." The sect master showed no mercy. Anyone who harmed his sect was his sworn enemy, especially when it involved his most treasured disciple. Violet sneered. "Kill me? Do you even know who I am? Just another demonic cultivator," I retorted. Their cultivation was built upon countless lives. I felt no pity for their demise. After all, I'd been one of their victims in my past life. What's wrong with refining cultivation through human essence? Violet shot back without elaboration, though a pained expression flickered across her face. "I'd planned to turn your flawless sect into my nourishment, but it seems that won't be happening now. But do you dare kill me?" Her expression suddenly radiated absolute confidence. She looked like a complete lunatic. The sect master snorted coldly, insolent, as he spoke. A surge of powerful spiritual energy shot from his palm straight toward Violet, yet Violet showed no trace of nervousness. Instead, she smirked triumphantly. I watched coldly from the sidelines, and just as expected, when Violet was on the brink of death, the ethereal immortal venerable Xander made his appearance. He shielded Violet, his face contorted with fury as he demanded in that same disappointed tone, "Lior, have you lost your mind? You dare attempt to kill my disciple." Lior, the Taoist title of the sect leader. Standing beside the sect leader, I chose to remain silent under the protection of this powerful ally. "Your disciple, why don't you ask what mischief she's been up to?" The sect leader's icy voice lashed at Xander, his disdain now evident in every glance. "What could a defenseless woman possibly do? Clearly you master and disciple conspired to bully her." Xander fumed, hurling baseless accusations at us. I couldn't help but laugh. "You can't wake someone who's pretending to sleep. Bullying her, it's your prized disciple who tried to kill mine. And to think he'd even practice such demonic arts." That boy remains a threat to our flawless sect as long as he draws breath. The sect master's gaze turned icy as he continued, as an elder elevated by the flawless sect's patronage. Surely you wouldn't shield such wrongdoing. Xander wasn't some outsider turned elder, but a true-born disciple of the flawless sect, a sworn brother from the sect master's own generation, though his current cultivation had reached the tribulation transcendence realm through personal merit. Just one step from the pinnacle. None of this would have been possible without the flawless sect's foundational support. After centuries of raising you, even a dog should show some gratitude. But Xander felt otherwise. To him, the flawless sect had become nothing but a burden. I am one of only 2 tribulation elders in the flawless sect, Xander declared with confidence. Cradling Violet while casting a disdainful glance at the sect leader, the sect nurtured me for a century. And I've shielded it for just as long. My debt is repaid, yet you, who've relied on my tribulation stage status to cultivate in peace, show no gratitude. Now you dare force my disciple to her death. Disgraceful. Immortal Venerable Xander's face twisted in anguish as his sword carried him aloft above the sect. Violet in his arms had already sized up the situation and pretended to faint. Xander's words, deliberately infused with spiritual energy, had already reverberated throughout the entire cultivation world. This caused an uproar among countless onlookers, with all the prominent figures from various sects and sacred lands staring in astonishment at the figure in the sky. What's happening? Immortal Venerable Xander is in such profound grief. What unspeakable crime has the flawless sect committed to drive someone to this extreme? Could it be that Immortal Venerable Xander intends to leave the flawless sect this time? Most of them took malicious delight in the situation, with only a rare few feeling genuine regret, yet this wouldn't stop them from courting this tribulation transcendence stage. Immortal Venerable, after all, tribulation transcendence are rare in the cultivation world. Any sect that possesses one instantly becomes peerless, and the flawless sect has 2. No wonder other sects are green with envy. They're practically salivating for the flawless sect to tear itself apart in internal strife. I observed the scene with detached calm, having long anticipated this turn of events, but this time, his departure won't bring any harm to the flawless sect, because in this life, the sect leader won't perish during his ascension to true immortal due to guilt over failing to protect me and driving Xander away, and I won't meet my end because of Xander's selfish favoritism, so I'm more than happy to see him leave the sect post-haste. With this cancer removed from our sect, I can lead us to greater glory. But the sect leader was fuming, his face crimson as he mounted his flying sword to confront Xander. Xander, you're spouting nonsense. Why don't you mention how your disciple practices forbidden arts? The sect leader bellowed, channeling more spiritual energy into his voice. He was determined to outshout Xander. The onlookers were utterly stunned by this revelation. You're lying. My apprentice is just an ordinary mortal. How could she possibly be a dark cultivator? This is clearly the flawless sect's persecution because they can't tolerate outsiders, Xander retorted while cradling Violet. The crowd observed the barely conscious woman in his arms. She certainly didn't resemble a dark practitioner. Their confusion only deepened in that moment. I saw with my own eyes that she was trying to kill my disciple. How could it be fake? If I hadn't kept a trick up my sleeve, I'd have come out of seclusion only to find Arwen's corpse, the sect master fumed, his beard bristling with rage. If only he had the strength, he'd have beaten Xander to a pulp too. The crowd was utterly baffled. As cultivators from a major sect at the tribulation transcendence stage, they saw no reason to harass mortals. Perhaps the woman truly was suspicious. The onlookers decided to keep watching, extending their spiritual senses to monitor the situation. Lies. Violet's the kindest soul. She could never be a demonic cultivator. Xander's gaze turned glacial, a murderous glint flashing in his eyes as his arms tightened around Violet. The sect master, noticing this reaction, felt his boiling rage dissipate instantly. His voice came out hoarse. So you're determined to shield this demonic cultivator woman, is that it? My heart skipped a beat. The sect master was clearly preparing to abandon Xander. Of course, as leader of the flawless sect, even a tribulation elder's importance paled against the safety of the sect's disciples. Keeping such a malignant tumor within our sect is a risk even the sect master dares not take. My eyes gleamed as I scanned the crowd below, searching for another victim of Violet's cruelty to fan the flames. I brought the young disciple forward and declared to the sect master, Master, this junior brother was also violated. The entire sect witnessed it. The sect master gasped, hastily pulling the disciple closer to reveal 2 still bleeding crimson scars on his shoulder. This is the wicked cultivation technique. The sect master's face darkened like a burnt pot. Taking a deep breath, he said to Xander, as former martial brothers, I'll give you one last chance. Will you still shield him? He had assumed that after all these years, Xander would have gained better judgment to distinguish priorities, yet Xander, blinded by personal grievances, retorted coldly, these are just your tactics to hound my disciple to death. A sect so devoid of honor isn't worth my allegiance. From this day forth, I sever all ties with your flawless sect. Consider our bond non-existent. Mark my words, when Violet triumphs at the upcoming Immortal Assembly, Don't come crying with regrets, without sparing the flawless sect a single courtesy. Xander turned on his heel and strode away with Violet in his arms. Only the sect master seemed genuinely disheartened. He placed a hand on my shoulder and sighed. Go now. The flawless sect will still need you in the days to come. I nodded and followed the sect master back to his cave abode. The flawless sect members stood silent as cicadas in winter. Not a single soul spoke to detain us. Demon practitioners deserve death at every righteous hand. That day's events became etched in many witnesses' memories, whether they were disciples of the flawless sect, passers-by outside its walls, or even the leaders of other sects. Everyone came to understand the full story. The rumor mill went into overdrive. Could immortal venerable Xander truly be shielding demonic cultivators? You bet. My aunt's relative who works at Flawless Sect saw with their own eyes that woman turning into a demonic cultivator and harming people, as a sect elder. There's no way you wouldn't understand something this basic. I don't buy it. Maybe it's just internal sect conflict. They probably made up an excuse to kick her out. Neither the gossip outside nor the silent tension within the sect could shake my determination to grow stronger, though immortal venerable Xander brought this upon himself. The flawless sect has ultimately lost a tribulation transcendent, with half our elite combat strength gone in an instant, if I don't step up. How can the flawless sect maintain its position as the top sect? That leaves me no choice but to seize the opportunities meant for those two. My formidable spiritual essence gives me the edge. In my past life, Violet couldn't fully refine me even at the golden core stage, yet carried me across the cultivation world. Every opportunity they obtained, I witnessed it all through divine sense. The process was painful, but the outcome was worth it. These past few days, I've been leading our sect disciples through perilous trials to prepare for the upcoming Immortal Sect Tournament. The Immortal Sect Tournament, held every century, pits elite cultivators from various sects against each other in combat, determining which sect gains control over more resource-rich territories. So these prodigies aren't just fighting for their sects, they're fighting for their own futures. In her past life, Violet reached the Golden Core stage during the Immortal Sect competition. Combined with her unorthodox cultivation methods, she effortlessly claimed the championship. The flawless sect's leader grew even more remorseful upon hearing this, believing he'd misjudged a truly exceptional talent. Little did he know, her so-called talent and diligence were built upon my corpse, feasting on my very soul. This realization made me redouble my efforts to gather resources. The sect is regularly stocked with magical artifacts, treasures, and elixirs I've collected. With the Grand Sect competition approaching, all these resources have been distributed to our disciples. I hope they'll give it their all. Opportunities like this don't come often. Secluded cultivation was tedious work. Only after seizing every recorded opportunity did I finally prepare to break through to the Golden Core realm. In what felt like an instant, the eve of the Grand Sect competition arrived. As I opened my eyes again, an ineffable aura enveloped my body. The spiritual energy in my dantian had liquefied and gradually condensed into a perfectly round golden elixir, the Golden Core stage. Just as expected, to consolidate my cultivation, I rose and left the cave abode, leading newly emerged disciples to venture out for battle once more. Along the way, we gathered considerable intelligence. The Transcendent Sage remains unaffiliated, drawing recruitment efforts from major sects. Yet rumors spread of this peerless immortal destroying an entire mortal city for a woman's sake. Later, he annihilated a minor sect, again over a woman. Then came the incident where someone offended Sage Xander's disciple, resulting in limb severing and banishment to the abyss. That's the ancient dwelling place of the demonic clans. Upon learning this, major sects began deliberately avoiding Xander and his disciples. Only minor sects sought his protection, offering most of their resources just to secure Xander's patronage. But soon after, Xander and his disciples vanished without a trace, becoming mere occasional whispers in the cultivation world. Learning of these matters left me utterly unfazed. My cultivation has now reached greater solidity. With but a thought, I could break through to the peak of Golden Core realm, perhaps even step into nascent soul. Yet to build a stronger foundation, I've deliberately held back my breakthrough, using those spirit beasts and resources solely to temper myself until reaching this pinnacle. At the peak of Golden Core, I could easily have claimed victory in past Immortal Sect tournaments. During this period, my prestige within the sect skyrocketed. After all, I'd brought back vast cultivation resources and was mentoring disciples without masters. Now everyone respectfully addresses me as senior sister. Only one person remembered my kindness in gifting those talismans and sought to become my disciple. It was that junior brother from before. This disciple humbly requests to study under senior sister. He's truly grateful, assessing his cultivation level, freshly broken through to foundation establishment. I'm certainly qualified to be his master, I asked, with so many elders in the sect, and me being your peer. You won't learn much from me. The junior disciple shook his head. Senior sister saved my life. Serving under you is my willing choice. Understanding his meaning, I nodded. I'll need to consult my master about this matter. After the Grand Sect tournament, if the sect leader approves, I'll take you as my disciple. When the time comes to lead the sect, I'll truly need a capable right hand. The junior brother left in high spirits. I stood before another cave abode where my master was in seclusion attempting the great ascension to true immortality. In my hands lay a wooden box containing the cultivation holy grail coveted by countless cultivators across the immortal realm, Ascension Blossom. This flower aids in the breakthrough to true immortality. When refined during the heavenly tribulation, it creates a perceptual error in the lightning judgment, making the heavens believe the cultivator has already achieved immortal form, thereby weakening the power of the heavenly tribulation. This rare treasure was something I'd only heard about in my past life during Xander and Violet's casual conversation. Now it's my master who gets to benefit from it. With a smile, I placed the wooden box at the entrance of the cave abode, along with all the magical artifacts and instruments for overcoming heavenly tribulations. Master, these are all the fortuitous encounters I've gathered recently. Please use whatever you need. Consider it this disciple's humble offering. After speaking these words respectfully, I took my leave from the master and descended the mountain with fellow disciples to attend the Immortal Sect Assembly. The Immortal Sect Conference is held on a floating island, featuring vast open spaces and breathtaking scenery, the perfect venue for tournament arenas and seating arrangements. Our nascent soul and deity transformation elders escorted us disciples to participate. When the Immortal Sect Conference begins, countless sects send their most talented disciples to vie for prestige and standing. This inevitably attracts malicious cultivators with ill intentions, necessitating protection for these prodigious youths. The sect typically dispatches numerous elite cultivators as escorts. In previous years, it was Immortal Venerable Xander who escorted us disciples to the competition, while the sect master remained at headquarters. But now with Xander gone, these duties have fallen upon their shoulders. Fortunately, the journey was uneventful, and we arrived safely at the Immortal Gate Assembly. Look, that's the head disciple of the Flawless Sect, truly a prodigious talent. They say she reached Foundation establishment at just 16. 2 years have passed. Who knows what realm she's attained now? What good is genius when it's paired with treachery? A jarring voice cut through the crowd. Turning toward the sound, I saw an unfamiliar face. He vented angrily to the crowd. Surely you've all heard about Arwen of the Flawless Sect switching masters. When Immortal Venerable Xander merely wanted to take his lifesaver as a disciple, she grew jealous. Convinced he'd lost interest in mentoring her, she went and apprenticed herself to someone else. Do you know who that someone else is? The Flawless Sect's Grandmaster? That's why I strongly suspect Immortal Venerable Xander was forced out by those master and disciple schemers. With a faint smile, I followed the elders to our designated seating area reserved for the Flawless Sect. Only a handful of sects shared the same prestigious front row seating as ours. My deliberate indifference only fueled his increasingly aggressive behavior. I watched clearly as he spread malicious rumors through the crowd, accusing me of betraying Immortal Xander and driving him to abandon our sect with his life-saving benefactor. Seeing those people wavering, my junior brother who wanted to become my disciple began fidgeting impatiently. Eldest senior sister, let me teach him a lesson. With that, my junior brother moved to confront him. I stopped him. Don't stir up trouble. Everything will be settled after the Immortal Sect tournament. As I spoke, a wisp of purple lightning coiled around my fingertip before I flicked it away. A piercing scream erupted from the crowd. The troublemaker's once lustrous black hair now stood in disheveled tufts. Who dares ambush me? Just wait till I summon my clan elder to teach you a lesson. Then his gaze locked onto mine as we stood face to face. A mischievous smirk played on my lips. Which sect do you belong to, disciple? Don't you know liars invite heavenly retribution? My words visibly made his face flush crimson with rage, yet he kept shouting defiantly, is there no justice left, just because you're from a major sect? You think you can bully us minor sects at will? His outburst silenced the entire crowd, because truth be told, that's exactly how things stood. Ignoring this fool's impotent rage, I was quietly awaiting the arrival of the cultivation sect's prodigies when my peripheral vision caught something unsettling. The troublemaking disciple who'd been spreading rumors earlier, a sinister black thread slithered across his body like a serpent. Suddenly, a booming voice announced, "The Celestial Spirit Sect has arrived." I frowned. This sect's name was unfamiliar. When had they emerged? As I took in the hierarchy of their sect, a flash of understanding crossed my eyes. The leader of the Celestial Spirit Sect was none other than Immortal Venerable Xander, who had previously departed from the Flawless Sect. By his side walked a delicate woman clinging to his arm, sweetly addressing him as master. The troublemaking disciple quickly scurried behind the Celestial Spirit Sect members and took a seat with them. Isn't that immortal venerable Xander? No wonder the Celestial Spirit Sect never participated in the Immortal Tournament before, but now they're joining. Wait, isn't the Immortal Tournament for junior disciples? No matter how powerful he is, it can't change the fact that the Celestial Spirit Sect lacks capable candidates. The crowd buzzed with speculation, perplexed by Xander's unexpected move. A thought struck me as I glanced toward the Celestial Spirit Sect's direction, where Violet still wore that provocative smirk while meeting my gaze. She puts on such a frail act in public, yet suddenly becomes full of energy when facing me. What's her game anyway? Rolling my eyes, I suddenly noticed every Celestial Spirit Sect member had the same barely visible black thread around their necks, just like that troublemaking disciple. Turning back to Violet, I saw her already snuggling into Xander's arms, cooing like a spoiled kitten. A chill ran down my spine as Violet's words from that day outside the cave dwelling still echoed in my ears. I had planned to turn your flawless sect into my nourishment, but it seems that won't be possible now. These were Violet's exact words that day. She intended to seize the entire flawless sect while the sect master was in seclusion, just as she's doing now with the Celestial Spirit Sect. Fortunately, I exposed her scheme. But in our past lives, did she plant these dark threads within the bodies of flawless sect disciples too, to serve as her secret nourishment? At this thought, my gaze toward Violet grew even more contemptuous. I'd meant to warn the Celestial Spirit Sect leader, but the Immortal Sect tournament had already begun. Besides, given his reverence for immortal venerable Xander, he likely wouldn't believe me even if I spoke up. Noticing my mood, the junior brother asked, "What's wrong, senior sister?" "That dark cultivator who harmed you is now with the Tianling sect," I said calmly. "He's about to represent them in the grand tournament." "What?" The junior brother jumped in shock. He still suffered lingering effects from that incident. Glancing toward the Tianling sect's area, he spotted Violet. His pupils contracted as he asked me gravely, "Senior sister, should we report this to the elders overseeing the tournament?" "The Immortal Sect Grand Tournament shall be presided over by last edition's champion sect. Alternatively, we could warn the Celestial Spirit Sect to be on their guard." The junior brother couldn't bear to see others suffer his same fate. He was fortunate to be rescued, but others might not be so lucky. Our conversation didn't escape the notice of other flawless sect members. Following their gaze, they indeed spotted Violet, and immediately the disciples began avoiding the Celestial Spirit Sect like the plague. The rumor-mongering junior disciple noticed our reaction and deliberately raised his voice, as expected of a great sect, looking down on folks from backwater regions like us. "Look how far they're keeping from us, as if we're some kind of monsters." This was clearly an exaggeration. Out of respect for immortal venerable Xander, the Celestial Spirit Sect was seated in the second-tier section, merely a diagonal away from us, though seated in positions of honor. We couldn't simply rise and leave no matter how much we wished to avoid this. His outburst drew all eyes toward us. Not that the current arena match between obscure junior disciples held much interest anyway. Only relatives and low-ranking cultivators bothered watching those lackluster bouts. Now the crowd's attention shifted here, instantly noticing how our sect's disciples recoiled from the Celestial Spirit Sect members. Everyone began murmuring in bewilderment. Why would a major sect have any reason to fear minor sects when everything was perfectly fine? Could it be that immortal venerable Xander took the prodigies of the flawless sect with him when he left? If that's not the case, then the flawless sect truly looks down on everyone, looking down on us country bumpkins. These words instantly inflamed the more sensitive listeners, who began loudly accusing the flawless sect of looking down on them. Such disgraceful behavior for a supposedly noble sect. Immortal venerable Xander sneered at the scene. The flawless sect remains as hypocritical as ever. Leaving that place was clearly the right decision. Nestled in his arms, Violet chimed in, "Master is absolutely right. If not for your timely rescue, they would have driven me to my death." She then put on a pitiful act, burying her face in Xander's chest while shedding crocodile tears. The spectacle enraged the entire Celestial Spirit Sect, who seemed particularly protective of Violet. "Violet is no longer part of your flawless sect. We won't tolerate any further bullying. The Celestial Spirit Sect will protect them with our lives. You're blind to true talent. None of you recognize Violet's genius. The uproar from the Celestial Spirit Sect and those minor factions means nothing to me. They're beneath my notice." Even the major sects could see the truth, yet they chose to remain silent. While the truly powerful may keep their composure, that doesn't mean the juniors in our sect can stay calm. My junior brother beside me wouldn't be restrained. He lashed out furiously, shouting at them, "Defend demonic cultivators today, and you'll become their next meal tomorrow. See these 2 red marks on my neck? She did this. If not for our senior sister's intervention, I'd be 6 feet under by now." The junior brother yanked open his collar, glaring at Violet with pure hatred. Your admiration for this woman means nothing to our flawless sect. His booming voice rivaled that sect leader's from the other day, instantly silencing the entire crowd. The others knew better than to provoke him further, so they grudgingly returned to watching the tournament. Meanwhile, the Tianling sect members glared at us with undisguised hostility, seeing their reaction. Violet must have really poisoned their minds. No wonder their sect had been so united against us earlier. They dared to slander us right to our sect's face. I shot them a cold glance before retrieving several talismans from my robe and handing them to my junior disciple. Distribute these boundary water talismans to every participating disciple. Make sure they carry them on their person at all times. I gave him firm instructions. With memories from my past life, I knew Violet's weakness better than anyone. A single boundary water talisman would suffice. If Violet dares to practice dark magic in secret, she'll be exposed in front of everyone. All right, the junior brother acknowledged, taking the talismans to distribute them one by one. During this time, I'd brought back no shortage of rare treasures. Every talented disciple in our sect has received gifts from me before, so they've grown accustomed to these protective talismans. They simply see it as their senior sister's duty to provide them with life-saving measures. Only after confirming everyone was wearing theirs did I finally look away. The announcer had already called Violet's name. Violet, enter the arena. That announcement revealed her full name. Turns out she did have a proper given name after all. Violet stood ethereal in white robes upon the dueling platform, facing a core disciple from a major sect at the peak of Foundation establishment, a prodigy in his own right, but doomed. I knew he stood no chance against her. When we dueled 2 years ago, Violet was already at Golden Core realm. After draining so many cultivators' essence, she's probably reached nascent soul by now. Sensing my own cultivation at Golden Core's zenith, I smirked. This Violet identity would be my ticket to fame. The clamor of the crowd snapped me out of my thoughts. With a single sword stroke, Violet sent the sect's elite disciple flying off the arena. The Celestial Spirit sect members erupted in uncontrollable cheers. Now it was Violet's turn to defend the arena. Just 5 more victorious challenges would secure her advancement. As expected, the next challenger, a prodigious talent at the early Golden Core stage, was likewise sent flying off the arena with a single strike from Violet's sword. Upon closer inspection, Violet's cultivation had astonishingly reached the pinnacle of the Golden Core realm. Violet, Violet. The arena erupted in cheers for her. Xander lounged casually in his seat, remarking with amusement, "Some fools can't even recognize a priceless jade when they see one. An 18-year-old Golden Core prodigy. Your head disciple probably peaked at that level too. To mistake Violet for some common mortal, utterly ridiculous." Faced with his sarcastic jabs, hot-blooded sect disciples nearly retorted, only to be silenced by their elders. They knew better than to stir trouble without their sect leader present, even if the reigning champion sect had tribulation transcendence among them. Such power wouldn't be lent unconditionally, unless Xander directly sabotages the Immortal Sect tournament. What a bunch of hypocritical cowards, Xander sneered, his icy gaze sweeping over us. I calmly replied, had the Immortal Venerable any self-awareness about taking pride in such dark arts, he'd never have uttered those words. What difference remains between humans who practice forbidden arts and the demons of the abyss? I met his murderous glare with steady composure. The crowd's gaze remained fixed on the stage. This marked Violet's 4th consecutive challenge. True to form, another Golden Core prodigy was swiftly defeated by her hand. Xander smirked triumphantly from his elevated seat as roaring cheers erupted from the spectators. Any suspicions about Violet being a demonic cultivator were momentarily forgotten, for straight victories spoke for themselves. All her opponents are merely at the early Golden Core stage. This last is a true prodigy. One more victory and she'll advance. Shall we send our sect's top genius to challenge her? True connoisseurs of talent wouldn't rob others of their opportunities. We're not petty like some people. Now our flawless sect has become the laughingstock of the major sect leaders. With a cold sneer, I was about to step onto the platform when a figure darted past me onto the arena. It was our sect's second-ranked prodigy, a mid-stage Golden Core cultivator. The crowd's cheers finally died down as he stepped onto the field, leaving only hushed whispers drifting through the arena. After a brief hesitation, I took my seat. Might as well let this guy expose Violet as the dark practitioner she was. By then, if Xander still defended Violet, he'd truly become public enemy number 1. I chuckled and kept watching the match from the platform, paying no mind to the gossip swirling around. In an instant, that prodigy engaged Violet in a fierce duel with his own combat techniques. I noticed every fighter who'd crossed blades with Violet bore a thin black line across their necks. Greed truly knows no bounds. Even with such cultivation, they still scheme for more right under everyone's noses. True to form, within moments Violet made her move against our sect's chosen elite. The junior brother asked anxiously, "Senior sister, Will our brother be all right? I shook my head. No, this match will likely be voided. My sharp eyes caught a black thread shooting from Violet's finger straight toward the prodigy's artery. In an instant, the entire arena froze in shock. A deathly silence fell. The black thread vanished the moment it touched Tinjio's neck, while Violet, having triggered the mirror water talisman's effect, was forcibly reverted to her true form on the arena. Violet's dark eyes turned blood red. Her ears grew pointed, and eerie black patterns emerged across her entire body, some even crept onto her cheeks. Her crimson eyes widened in shock. Impossible, even a fool like Violet knew never to reveal her true identity during the Immortal Sect tournament. Glancing at the talisman beneath the prodigy's feet, she roared, "A mirror water talisman, it exposes all wickedness. Why would you bring this to a duel against righteous cultivators?" The crowd's gazes toward Violet had transformed, no longer admiration or excitement, but pure suspicion, terror, and revulsion. Dark cultivator, she's a dark cultivator, kill her now. Those who practice forbidden arts are all wicked. Her cultivation was built on human lives. How many more must die if we let her live? The arena erupted in waves of condemnation, all demanding her death. Whoosh! Two figures materialized above the grand immortal tournament. Hovering midair as they thundered with righteous fury, heretic cultivators, you shall perish. These were tribulation transcendent immortals overseeing the tournament, the very pillars of their respective sects, with their long swords poised to pierce Violet's body. They were abruptly stopped by immortal venerable Xander. His icy gaze swept across the crowd as he declared, "My disciple, let's see who dares lay a finger on her." Like finding sanctuary. Violet swiftly took refuge behind Xander's back. I approached the arena to help the petrified disciple to his feet, intending to lead him away when an unexpected obstruction occurred. A long sword suddenly embedded itself in the ground before me. It felt familiar. That was his bonded sword. The next instant, immortal venerable Xander's voice boomed from above, "Arwen, what dark sorcery have you used to frame my disciple?" I halted mid-step, staring at him in disbelief. "Are you blind, Venerable Xander, or is it just your eyes that fail you, not your judgment?" With so many witnesses seeing Violet reveal her true form, blaming me now is utterly absurd. My retort turned Xander's face as dark as a burnt pot, yet he still landed on the arena and picked up the shattered talisman from the ground. "Back in the sect, you framed Violet out of sheer jealousy, and now, isn't it her superior talent that drove you to murderous intent?" He held up the broken talisman, staring at me. "This is the proof. So what cursed charm did you use to alter Violet's appearance?" He kept pressing forward, refusing to acknowledge Violet's identity as a demonic cultivator. The two tribulation stage elders frowned deeply, seeing Xander shielding his disciple so fiercely. They examined the talisman and said, "Xander, this is just an ordinary mirror water talisman. Are you letting your protectiveness cloud your judgment?" "Impossible. I couldn't possibly be mistaken. It was Arwen who framed my disciple. If not for her, my Violet would never have become like this." Clutching the demonically transformed Violet, Xander screamed at me with raw desperation, "You're just jealous of her talent. I know it. Ever since the sect days, you've resented me for taking her as my disciple. Arwen, you're taking this too far." A flash of murderous intent flickered in his eyes. Had it not been for those two tribulation transcendents standing guard, I'd probably be dead by now. I patted the prodigy's shoulder to dismiss him, then calmly met Xander's gaze. "You think I'm jealous of her talent? Then let's settle this in a duel. We'll see who's truly superior." Violet's eyes gleamed with excitement. "Excellent. How about a fight to the death? The loser pays with their life." A bloodthirsty glint flashed in her eyes. "I've always known dark cultivators are murderous by nature." "Fine," I responded, drawing my life-bound sword. Xander glared coldly at me. "Since you're courting death, don't blame me for what comes next." The other two tribulation transcendents approached me, their eyes filled with concern, but they ultimately remained silent despite their parted lips. Their cultivation simply couldn't match Xander's, the former prodigy who once stood above all. Even among tribulation cultivators there are power gaps. Their fight with Xander would be catastrophic, with no guarantee of victory. If I can win this, they'll at least have shut Xander up with their verbal sparring. They might even rally the entire cultivation world to launch a crusade. Suddenly all eyes in the Immortal Sect tournament were upon us. On the arena, Violet stared at me like I was her next meal. Dark threads coiled around her 5 fingers. She wasn't even trying to hide her sinister intent. I sneered. "You're the first demonic cultivator bold enough to stand among the crowd. Must be nice having a blind master to cover for you." Violet remained unshaken. "That's envy talking. You covet having someone wholly devoted to me while you have nothing. All those years slaving for Flawless Sect. Did a single soul speak for you? Did anyone step forward to duel me in your place?" Meeting the anxious gazes of the Flawless Sect members, I smiled faintly. "Against you, I alone am more than enough." With those words, I raised my sword and launched my attack. In my past life, I'd spent every waking moment with those two despicable people, even witnessing Violet's cultivation firsthand. I know every single one of her flaws and weaknesses like the back of my hand. Just as expected, my single strike sent Violet staggering back a dozen paces, yet she didn't panic, instead flashing a triumphant smirk. "Know what I hate most about you?" I snapped coldly. "Spare me the theatrics, your pretentious act. That's what I can't stand," with a sudden flourish of her arms. Violet unleashed inky black threads that came at me from all directions. Frowning slightly, I swung my sword to sever them, only for the dark ribbons to stretch and coil toward me again. In an instant, the entire arena was overrun with writhing black tendrils. Haha, these soul-devouring strands are tailor-made to counter your lightning techniques. Just wait to die, Violet sneered with twisted glee. Her face contorted into a terrifying mask of excitement. The surrounding spectators gasped in horror at the sight. She really is a dark cultivator. Is Xander actually going to shield her? A righteous immortal lord actually aiding the wicked? This is utterly despicable. The crowd erupted in curses. Fear had turned to furious rage, and they directed all their wrath at the true culprit. The celestial spirit sect was utterly shocked, even trembling with belated dread. But I knew none of this, trapped as I was within countless dark threads. With no escape in sight, with a cold sneer, I curled my fingers into claws as crackling lightning surged into my palm, then slammed it mercilessly into the ground. In that instant, thunder roared. Crack, zap. A split second later, countless black threads were incinerated by the electric fury. Violet's eyes widened in disbelief as she stared at the scene before her. How could this be? I withdrew the lightning and sneered. Soul-devouring means nothing. My thunder carries the power of heavenly tribulation. Besides, in my past life, I'd already endured the agony of having my soul consumed. Did they really think I wouldn't guard against it this time? I stomped the ground into fragments and charged at her like a bolt of lightning, closing the distance in an instant. Violet stumbled backward in panic, but couldn't escape my grasp on her wrist. I clenched my fist and delivered a crushing blow. The sickening crack of breaking bone echoed across the arena, followed by Violet's piercing scream. Clutching her right shoulder, blood dripped between her fingers as pain beaded cold sweat across her forehead. "How dare you strike me? How dare you?" Violet glared at me with gnashed teeth, but I felt no pity. Having endured inhuman torment in my past life, this lifetime, I'll repay her in kind. Just as she lunged to attack me again, I kicked her flying midair while binding her with crackling lightning. Violet collapsed at the edge of the ring, her face turning deathly pale from excruciating pain as beads of sweat rolled down her forehead. Just as I was about to strike Violet, Xander intervened. "Arwen, lay one finger on her and I'll end you." Xander's icy glare locked onto me as his tribulation stage aura came crushing down. This at least gave Violet a moment's respite. Seizing the moment, she waved toward the celestial spirit sect, and in that instant, piercing shrieks erupted from the seats as every soul she'd secretly marked met their gruesome fate. Countless elders and disciples withered into emaciated corpses, collapsing across the arena. The crowd recoiled in terror, but the two Transcendence Realm experts swiftly restored order. They unleashed their oppressive aura, immobilizing everyone present while incidentally lifting Xander's restriction on me. Now they were truly enraged. "Xander, stop being so obstinate." One of them moved to kill Violet, but Xander still intervened. I heard his voice with crystal clarity. "How dare you lay hands on my disciple?" Xander roared in fury. He tried to charge onto the arena to kill me, but was intercepted by those two Transcendence Realm experts. In an instant, the three combatants soared into the sky and became a whirlwind of clashing steel, though both others had reached the tribulation stage. They were merely at its initial phase, while Xander had already attained its pinnacle. Such a gap could lethally catch opponents off guard. Thus, the crowd hesitated to act against Xander due to his status, resorting to having the sect's strongest cultivator erect a protective barrier instead. The more timid participants had already fled the Immortal Sect tournament. At my signal, the elders of the Flawless Sect swiftly moved to protect the younger disciples. "Eldest senior sister will be fine. We must have faith in her." The youngest disciple clenched his fists as he stared at the arena. The others were equally on edge. Meanwhile, Violet on the ground saw her cultivation surge dramatically as she devoured copious amounts of vital essence and souls. In an instant, she broke through the nascent soul stage, her gaze fixed on me with murderous intent. "Your life is mine." Gripping my life-bound sword tightly, I signaled the elders of my sect to hold back and charged forward alone. The black threads on her hands grew even more frenzied, her attacks eerily unpredictable. Every time I blocked, she'd use my own force to pivot and strike from another angle. It's like having infinite clones. The more I fought, the harder it became. After all, my opponent was a nascent soul cultivator. A sudden wave of danger prickled my senses, sending my alertness skyrocketing. Suddenly, Violet's lips curled into a cruel smirk as she taunted. Who'd have thought the almighty senior sister would one day become my cultivation resource? Didn't you look down on me? How does it feel to be trampled by someone you despised? Violet cackled maniacally, with my spiritual senses scanning the battlefield. I instantly leaped dozens of paces away the moment Violet's black threads attempted to ensnare me. Suddenly, Violet's voice whispered in my ear, "Perish." I dodged immediately. She took advantage of my evasion to ambush me. I snapped back to focus, but was a split second too late. Her palm struck my chest. Thud. I was sent flying several meters through the air. Pfft, a mouthful of blood sprayed out. She sneered contemptuously. "So you're merely at the golden core stage." Wiping the blood from my lips, I slowly rose to face her. "Oh really? At least I don't cultivate my power with human lives." I raised my sword, radiating an aura so fierce it seemed capable of splitting the heavens. "Ha," Violet sneered. "The height of hypocrisy. You righteous cultivators are all utterly hypocritical. You're just hoarding those superior cultivation techniques to keep them from us mortals. Why should only you walk the righteous path? I deserve it too." I sneered contemptuously. "You're unworthy, unworthy. Then who is?" "Even your so-called paragon of virtue kneels before my charms," Violet declared with smug satisfaction. "Saving my master when he was wounded, that was my greatest destiny." Dark energy surged from her arm, coiling into a razor-sharp spike. "Consider yourself lucky to witness my newly mastered technique." She lunged at me with terrifying speed, several times faster than before. My eyes narrowed dangerously. Soul-severing needles, her signature move from past lives. Good thing I came prepared for her tricks. Even though she's at the nascent soul stage, but who says I can't be? The next instant, countless bolts of lightning gathered in my hand, slowly channeling into the blade. In a flash, the lightning-forged edge came roaring down. The moment they collided, everything exploded. Violet and I staggered backward several steps simultaneously, both spewing mouthfuls of fresh blood. Violet stared at me in shock, clearly unprepared for my ability to match her power. How is this possible?" she exclaimed through gritted teeth. She'd fully expected her soul-annihilating needles would reduce me to ashes, leaving only my essence for her cultivation. Little did she know, I had countless ways to counter her. The final time I withstood Violet's assault, my cultivation naturally advanced to the nascent soul stage through this transcendent battle. "They've already taken precautions against your dark arts. You've got no one left to harvest," I said coldly. "All the sects have tightened their security." Barring Violet from approaching, they were visibly awestruck when I reached the nascent soul stage, yet too fearful of attracting immortal venerable Xander's attention, everyone chose to remain silent. "Violet, even your master is currently pinned down by 2 other cultivators, so now, it's time for payback." My icy voice reached Violet's ears. Violet remained confident, the outcome still anyone's game. But the ensuing battle proved beyond doubt. She was no match for me. With the final blow, I sent Violet reeling to the edge of the arena, her body drenched in blood, her crimson eyes burned with hatred as she spat. "If I die, my master will hunt you to the ends of the earth." Ignoring her threat, I gathered crackling lightning in my palm and drove it mercilessly toward her skull. A blood-curdling scream echoed across the battleground, with lightning coursing through her nerves. I whispered like a demon in her ear, "How does it feel to have your soul torn apart?" Yet in my past life, I endured this torment for years. The ice in my eyes burned into pure hatred. A glimmer of confusion flickered in Violet's pain-filled eyes before being swallowed by agony. "No, I won't die. Master, save me," Violet murmured vacantly, her eyes glazed over. True to form, I severed her tongue, silencing her pleas for help. She could only glare at me with venomous hatred. I withdrew my hand, not out of mercy, but to let her taste the agony of my past life. And what kind of torment did those she murdered endure before their deaths? Just as I was about to end her life, an enraged shout pierced my ears. "Stop, Arwen," Xander roared, mustering all his strength to repel the 2 tribulation stage cultivators before leaping onto the arena. A palm strike landed square on my chest. My body went flying backward and crashed onto the fighting platform. "Senior sister." Members of the Flawless sect rushed down to check my injuries, but I was completely unfazed. I'd come prepared. In a flash, I produced a shattered jade pendant from my robe and murmured, "No worries, my master gave me plenty of treasures, like anyone here doesn't have a master." Pfft. Only then did the disciples relax. Across from us, Xander looked absolutely wrecked. With red-rimmed eyes, he cradled the battered Violet in his arms. "I'll heal you right now." As he spoke, wisps of life energy emanated from his body, instantly bringing color back to Violet's pallid cheeks. Violet's lips parted soundlessly, no voice escaping her throat. Well, I cut out her tongue. What else could I do when she'd just scream master the moment she opened her mouth? "Can't just call in the elders every time you lose. What kind of sore loser does that?" Violet really is a sore loser. Seeing her pitiful state, Xander directed all his fury at me. "Arwen, after what you've done to my disciple, What possible excuse could you have? Xander helped Violet up, his icy glare fixed on me. I recognized the murderous intent in his eyes and simply laughed. Immortal venerable, my stance remains, evil cultivators deserve death by all. Xander, my apprentice, she's not. His voice cracked, knowing this excuse would find no believers now. With nothing left to lose, he channeled formidable spiritual energy into his palms, leveling it at me. Anyone who harms Violet will pay with their life. You're no exception, my fellow disciples shielded me, eyeing Xander warily. I stood up unfazed and calmly asked, aren't you afraid my master will seek vengeance? Xander, that man lives only for the sect, he'd retaliate against me. If I vowed to slaughter every last member of your flawless sect should he dare strike back, do you think he would? Today, you die abandoned, not a soul will stand in your defense, begging won't save you now. He raised his sword, leaving me no chance to survive. Xander even roared, anyone who dares stand in my way will have their sect destroyed next, and he absolutely had the power to do it. The others remained silent, even those two Transcendence Realm cultivators hesitated. All she could do was glare at him with pure loathing. Violet stared at me with venom in her eyes, wishing nothing more than my death at this moment, facing the threat of death. I pushed aside my junior brother shielding me and said, don't worry, I'll be fine, no way. We'll escort you back to the sect. Once the Grandmaster emerges from seclusion, everything will be fine. I looked at my fellow disciples, their faces filled with concern as they said, right, we'll hold them off here. You hurry back to the sect and seek the Grandmaster's protection. You're his target, he won't harm us. Go now. My junior brother grabbed my arm, ready to flee by sword flight. I gazed at them blankly before breaking into a radiant smile. Don't worry, with Master here, I'll be perfectly safe, but the sect leader is thousands of miles away. The junior disciple fretted anxiously. I shook my head gently. Your concern alone means everything. Only then did I feel my efforts hadn't been in vain. Xander truly remained the sole exception within the flawless sect. Xander, prepared to die, with a single-handed seal, his sword shot through the air straight toward me in an instant, giving me no chance to survive. I shoved aside the disciples surrounding me. I summoned every treasure from my spatial ring to block his attack. Xander sneered, Lear's being surprisingly generous. With a cold laugh, he lunged at me again. The sheer power of his tribulation stage cultivation left me gasping for air. A thunderous boom erupted. Fortunately, the sect master had equipped me with countless magical artifacts, items capable of blocking tribulation stage attacks or even launching counterstrikes of equivalent power. I desperately deployed these treasures to withstand Xander's relentless assaults. Fortunately, he seemed to enjoy watching me descend into despair step by step without actually striking. Otherwise, I'd have been obliterated in an instant. Must be settling scores and backing Violet up. Violet got her kicks. And I wasn't exactly complaining either. Deprived of my last tribulation-grade artifact, I stared at the murderous longsword and screamed, Master, save me. In an instant, a thunderous boom erupted. The sky darkened with ominous clouds as the sect leader's voice carried from afar. An ethereal resonance filled the air. Xander, how dare you cause trouble during my tribulation? You harmed my disciple. Just wait till I finish transcending. I'll end you, with just a single telepathic message. Xander's attack was completely nullified. I heaved a sigh of relief. Close call, but everyone else stood dumbstruck, frozen in shock. Even Xander muttered in disbelief. Heavenly tribulation, thunder calamity, a Mahayana immortal. A wave of belated fear hit him as he jerked his head toward the distant horizon. Dark clouds gathered over Wishasek's back mountain. Someone was clearly undergoing a heavenly tribulation. Violet trembled violently, clutching Xander's sleeve with an expression of utter disbelief. Then her gaze turned toward me, burning with jealousy. I could practically read her thoughts. It's just sheer envy. Why do you get all the luck while I'm left with none? Heavenly tribulation. Could the flawless sex leader be attempting the great ascension? Given his overwhelming aura earlier, success seems within reach. A 90% chance of becoming a great ascension immortal, compared to mere tribulation transcendence. The other two tribulation cultivators exchanged bewildered glances. Sensing Xander's murderous intent toward me, they instantly stepped forward with righteous defiance to shield me. Xander, shielding a demonic cultivator, how shameless, and now you dare attack such a gifted, virtuous young disciple. Utterly despicable. If you dare lay a finger on her, we'll make you pay. Watching the two figures blocking my path, I twitched the corner of my mouth, but with their warning, Xander indeed held back from acting. Still shielding Violet, he growled, Fine, I won't kill her. From now on, I'm done with your righteous path. I'll take Violet far away from you people. As these words were spoken, the heavenly tribulation paused. A golden light flashed, coalescing into the silhouette of an ancient figure high in the sky. A refreshing aura wafted through the air as an immortal elder, radiating celestial grace, descended before me on auspicious clouds, his extraordinary presence immediately apparent. After glancing at me, he turned to Xander and declared, If you're not of the righteous path, then you must be heretics. It's my duty to eradicate your kind. The sect master stood there with stern solemnity, He sighed as he looked down at Xander and Violet lying on the ground. After all, you were once disciples of our sect, consider this, house cleaning. The smiles froze on Xander and Violet's faces. They'd actually thought they might be spared. The gap between Mahayana cultivation and the tribulation transcendence stage was vast, the latter being half a step into true immortalhood. In the blink of an eye, those two figures before me vanished into thin air, gone without a trace before I could even react. As I blinked, the sect master appeared by my side. That ascension blossom of yours really works, he boomed with laughter, looking at me with undisguised pride. I smiled in return. All credit goes to my master's teachings. From this day forth, I fear the Wuxia sect may no longer hold the title of the foremost cultivation sect. I must hasten to catch up to my master's footsteps. Story 2, my sister and I accidentally traveled to the world of beastmen. She found the Peacock King handsome and followed him to the Peacock Kingdom in the sky. I went with the Dragon King to the sea and joined the Dragon Clan. Unexpectedly, the peacock was cold by nature, and my best friend couldn't resist conspiring with other beastmen, leading to her imprisonment by the Peacock King. Yet I bore 7 dragon princes in one birth, showered with the Serpent King's boundless favor, becoming his queen. My sister begged for my help, only to scream when I was about to rescue her. The Peacock King heard and struck me dead. When I opened my eyes again, my sister had already chosen the Serpent King she once scorned. Little does she know the Dragon Kin prize offspring above all. Let her bear the agony of being a breeding tool this time. My sister Briar ran towards the Dragon King's direction. I knew she had also been reborn. In her past life, she thought the Peacock King was more handsome than the Dragon King and believed those in the sky were nobler than those in water. So she chose the Peacock King first. Sister, you're afraid of heights. Choosing the Peacock King might not suit your life. You'd better go live underwater with the Dragon King. Even now, she still puts on the act of being deeply sisterly with me. Sister, since you're into looks, I'll leave a top-tier man like the Peacock King for you. I smiled. Then she rushed straight toward the Dragon Serpent King. The Dragon Serpent King glanced at me curiously, and I immediately changed direction. In my past life, the Dragon King Magnus still found novelty in me, a human, often defending me in front of his brothers and spending every night with me, but his interest in me quickly faded. After giving birth to my first child and before even finishing the postpartum confinement, I was forced to conceive again. Only then did I realize the rumors were true. 1. The Dragon Kin place extreme importance on offspring, and female dragons must breed incessantly. Thus, in the days that followed, Magnus treated me as nothing more than a breeding tool, forcing me to bear child after child, even once delivering 7 at once. My once beautiful face became swollen and sallow from pregnancy hormones, my proud figure turned loose and saggy, and gynecological symptoms from excessive childbearing gradually emerged. Magnus grew tired of my ugliness, giving me only the hollow title of Wolf Queen while continuing to entertain other female beast folk. Briar feared Magnus might notice me again, so he blocked Magnus' line of sight toward me. I quickly moved toward the Peacock King as well. Peacock King Zephyr is truly handsome, with an elegant and noble demeanor. Mundane language cannot describe the awe I felt when I first laid eyes on him. Peacocks may be aloof, but at least they are monogamous, displaying their plumage for only one mate and having a single partner, whereas flood dragons are driven by desire and place great importance on offspring. I wonder if my sister can handle that. After all, being cherished by her husband is what she desires. Right, let's go, Zephyr spoke softly, placing his hand gently over my eyes. In an instant, we arrived at the Peacock Clan's home at the edge of the sky. My head grew heavy, and I fell asleep. Before losing consciousness, I only felt myself in a warm embrace. In my dazed state, I sensed something soft brush against my lips, and then my fear of heights simply vanished. In the previous life, Zephyr was too cold towards Briar, unable to endure the loneliness. Briar repeatedly tried to seduce Zephyr without success, then conspired with orcs from other clans. When she was caught red-handed, she watched helplessly as the orc she conspired with was beaten to death with sticks. Only by desperately begging and making promises did she manage to spare her own life. Zephyr did spare her, but only imprisoned her. However, the entire Peacock clan had already become wary of her. Briar exhausted all means to finally establish contact with me. By this time, I had already become the queen of the waters, second only to one person and above 10,000 others. My heart was with Briar, and I pleaded desperately with Magnus until he finally sent troops to attack the Peacock clan. In the chaos, I reached the place where Briar was imprisoned. Just as I was struggling to pick the lock, Briar suddenly shouted, "Help! The Dragon Queen is trying to take me away." Peacocks can communicate with their mates over great distances. Hearing the call, Zephyr arrived and struck me dead with a single blow. I've always cherished Briar as a younger sister, and even more so after crossing into the Beastman world. In this world that doesn't belong to me, she is the only proof of my existence in the real world. That's why I went to save her without hesitation. Little did I expect she would sever all my hopes of returning home, even seeking my death. So after rebirth, her choice of the Dragon King was within my expectations. After all, She had expressed envy more than once over my children filling the house and my husband's doting affection. Just as well, I don't want to go back to those days when I wasn't treated as a human being. When I woke up, Zephyr was lying beside me, his gorgeous feathers gently covering my feet. You're awake. The moment I stirred slightly, Zephyr opened his eyes keenly. I shrank back a little and nodded. What's your name? Zephyr looked down at me with a heavy gaze. Leona. My voice trembled slightly. After all, I died by Zephyr's hands in my previous life, so I naturally feared him. Zephyr, I nodded, and he suddenly raised his hand, gently brushing my cheek. I looked up at him and fell into Zephyr's beautiful eyes, vast as the starry sky. We'll be married tomorrow. Having said that, he left, leaving me alone in this vast palace. Fine, at least this way I'm free and can occasionally go play on land. My husband is cold-natured and wealthy, so why not enjoy it? Zephyr didn't return until evening. After leaving, he walked up to me, wordlessly took my hand, and with a gentle touch, made a small cut on my fingertip. Ouch, that stings a little. I stared blankly at my bleeding hand, unsure of what he intended to do. Then Zephyr cut his own hand as well, took out an exquisite jade pendant, held my hand, and together we let our blood drip onto it. The blood was quickly absorbed into the jade pendant, which instantly looked as if it had been consecrated. Appearing brand new. What are you doing? I asked in confusion. Forming a marital contract with you, Zephyr said calmly. Then, he split the jade pendant in two and handed half to me. I seem to remember now. Peacocks are born with a jade pendant in their mouths, used when marrying their beloved. When blood merges with the pendant, they'll never be separated for eternity. I recall in the previous life, Briar used this very pendant to communicate with Zephyr across thousands of miles. Seeing me hesitate to take it, a flicker of disappointment passed through Zephyr's eyes. What? Not satisfied with me, I quickly shook my head, took the pendant, and carefully tucked it into my robe. Nothing like that. The moment I took the jade pendant in my hand, I suddenly felt a surge of warmth flow through my body, then I fell into a deep sleep again. I don't know if it was just my imagination, but I kept feeling something cold and soft touch my forehead. The next day was the grand wedding, and the entire peacock tribe came. I don't know how Zephyr managed it, with just one day to prepare for the wedding, yet this ceremony turned out to be extraordinarily grand. This is something I never experienced among the dragon folk, because while I was nominally Magnus' wife among the dragon folk, in reality Magnus had many other females around him for his amusement. So Magnus didn't pay much attention to our wedding ceremony, he was only looking forward to the wedding night. What are you thinking about? Zephyr's voice pulled me back to reality. I shook my head and stared blankly at Zephyr in his wedding attire. He was dazzlingly handsome, like a deity descended from heaven. After the ceremony, Zephyr and I sat facing each other in the bridal chamber, the atmosphere somewhat awkward. My lord, it's time for us to rest. I was the first to break the quiet atmosphere. Zephyr froze momentarily upon hearing how I addressed him, then his ears turned slightly red. I also realized what I had just called him and suddenly felt somewhat shy. It's time to rest. Zephyr curled his lips slightly, his eyes carrying a hint of pleasure. This is something I haven't seen in so long. After turning off the lights, knowing Zephyr's cold temperament meant we wouldn't be having a traditional wedding night, I consciously kept half a bed's distance from him, then I peacefully fell asleep, but in my half-asleep state, I felt myself enveloped in a warm embrace. Too hot, I murmured softly, then that embrace seemed to panic momentarily before quietly withdrawing. When I woke up the next day, Zephyr was already gone. The maidservant dressed me up, saying that the Peacock King had specifically instructed them to prepare human food for me. Just when I thought I'd be eating vegetarian, the maidservant served me some roasted bird meat and a plate of quail eggs. Wait, even though Zephyr is the Sky King, surely he wouldn't roast his own subjects for me to eat. Seeming to notice my confusion, the maidservant smiled and explained, "My queen, we distinguish between beast folk and ordinary animals. What you're eating are ordinary animals, no need to worry." I nodded and started eating with relief. During this time, Zephyr and I got along harmoniously. Each doing our own things, he handled his political affairs while I wandered around aimlessly. After all, Zephyr had money. While strolling through an alley, I unexpectedly heard gossip about myself. "Have you heard? Our queen is actually a human. Humans can't survive long in our thin air. I bet the king has given his beast core to the queen." I felt suspicious and went back to ask Zephyr, "Husband, where is your beast core?" I asked directly without beating around the bush. Zephyr paused in handling official affairs, then looked at me. "What happened to you? When did you put this on me?" Zephyr chuckled softly. "When you first arrived." I recalled that first day when I arrived. In my dazed state, feeling something soft brush against my lips, I understood how Zephyr had transferred the beast core to me, and couldn't help but blush slightly. "But isn't the beast core the lifeblood of you beastmen? How could you just place it within me like this?" I bit my lip and asked, "We have forged a contract. bound by fate, inseparable for eternity. From now on, you are my lifeline. Who would have thought someone as aloof as Zephyr could say such alluring words? Gazing at his peerless beauty, I suddenly felt my mouth go dry. I seem to have developed some improper thoughts about him, but I know this is wrong. I wanted to escape, so I said goodbye and tried to leave. But Zephyr suddenly grabbed my hand. 3. Momentum sent me tumbling heavily into Zephyr's embrace. Zephyr's feathers were soft, gently brushing against my calves. I think I accidentally pressed my hand on Zephyr. The skin contact made Zephyr's neck and ears visibly turn red. I wanted to get up, but my hand kept fumbling and touching them several more times in panic. Zephyr hastily pinned down my unruly hand and pulled me up. Are you blushing? Zephyr looked at me with laughter in his eyes. Of course, he's like some kind of enchantress. I turned away angrily, refusing to look at him. Zephyr turned my body back towards him, and I suddenly noticed faint dark circles under his eyes. Have you encountered anything interesting here? Tell me about it, Zephyr asked. Instead of answering him, I asked, haven't you been resting well lately? Yeah, it's an old problem. I put down the book in his hand and led him to the bed. You sleep. I'll tell you a story. I rambled on about the interesting things I'd heard these past few days, while Zephyr just smiled softly at me, his gaze tender as he listened attentively. I told you to sleep. Why are you looking at me? I suddenly felt somewhat shy. Zephyr chuckled softly, raising his hand to stroke my hair before closing his eyes peacefully. Watching Zephyr's breathing gradually steady, his usually cold expression softened. Looking at Zephyr, I felt an indescribable sense of peace. In this orc world now, the only one I can rely on is Zephyr. The peacock has always been devoted. He will protect me. I am human. Without the strength or magic of orcs, I am undoubtedly weak. I really want to go back, but even though I searched for a lifetime in my previous life, I couldn't find a way to return. I let out a sigh towards Zephyr. I am undoubtedly filled with guilt and fear. In my previous life, it was because of my instigation that the entire dragon clan declared war on the peacock clan. The scene of peacock and dragon corpses strewn across the battlefield still lingers vividly before my eyes. Though I wasn't openly involved in the war, I always felt my hands were stained with blood, so even if I end up being killed by Zephyr, I won't blame him. After all, I started the war, so death would be a kind of release. Besides, Zephyr treats me very well now. I just wonder, without me in this lifetime, will there still be wars? Gazing at Zephyr's serene features, I kissed him between his brows. I'm not sure if it's my imagination, but Zephyr's lips seemed to curl slightly. Briar sent a letter inviting me to her 100-day celebration. Turns out she's already given birth to a child, and it's even been 100 days. Time really flies. I looked up at Zephyr. Husband, may I go? I must definitely meet Briar. After all, she's now the queen of the... At the same time, I'm also a bit curious. If she were to relive my life in this lifetime, would she still think I'm happy? Zephyr nodded and then said, I'll accompany you. Even after being together for so long, I still find myself occasionally stunned by Zephyr's beauty. Husband, will you accompany me? In my understanding, Zephyr has always been very busy. I never expected him to take time out to accompany me, especially since, well, he's never been stingy materially. His attitude toward me has always been lukewarm. Zephyr nodded, fed me a water-repelling pill, then transformed into a peacock form, signaling for me to ride on him. Actually, with his magical power, he could have simply teleported us directly into the sea. A surge of sweetness welled up in my heart as I climbed on and tightly hugged Zephyr's neck. The Orcish aura differs across land, sea, and air, so the moment we entered the ocean, Briar and Magnus knew and were already waiting at the entrance to greet us. When she saw me, Briar still played the role of affectionate sisters with me, warmly grabbing my hand the moment we met, but I noticed her belly had slightly swollen again. Briar's complexion didn't look great, but her heavy makeup barely concealed it. Sister, I've finally seen you again, Briar said with a smile. I chuckled along with them. Briar glanced at Zephyr behind me, seemingly surprised that he had come with me too. Then she leaned in and whispered in my ear, have you two slept together? How is he in bed? I remained silent, but didn't miss the glint of schadenfreude in Briar's eyes. It's all right, peacocks are naturally aloof. Take your time. Having obtained the conclusion Briar wanted, she patted my shoulder with a more genuine smile. I nodded, and then Briar was pulled into Magnus' embrace, but Magnus' viper-like gaze remained fixed on me. Feeling somewhat afraid, I retreated behind Zephyr. In my past life, forced by Magnus to bear child after child, the scenes of being toyed with by Magnus and his brothers remain vivid in my memory. Magnus' torment was so profound that my fear of him has been etched into my very bones. Zephyr noticed my fear and stepped forward to block Magnus' line of sight, glaring at him with hostility. Magnus chuckled softly and left with Briar, taking their seats. The banquet was grand and luxurious, with Briar holding the child at the head of the table, undoubtedly the center of attention. Seeing me enter, Briar waved at me with the child in their arms, signaling for me to come over. I walked over, claiming to reminisce with me, but really just here to show off. Look at your niece, isn't she adorable? Briar handed me the child in her arms to see, so fair and tender, truly lovely, so it's a girl. No wonder they're throwing such a grand feast, for, in the Beastman world, females are scarce. One more female means the race can reproduce more effectively. Thinking of my children from my previous life, a wave of sorrow wells up in my heart again. Magnus wouldn't allow me to get close to the children, only making me bear one after another, so until my death, the children remained distant from me. No wonder Briar held the child so preciously in her arms today, as she rarely got to see the child at other times. They are quite adorable. I smiled sincerely, hearing me say this. Briar was very pleased. Then deliberately showed off her various jewels and said, "Sister, how does your husband treat you?" "He's quite good to me," I replied. "My husband treats me well too, especially in bed. He's very vigorous." Briar lowered her voice and said to me with a blushing face, "I know Magnus is quite skilled in that regard, and so are his brothers," recalling Briar's inability to endure loneliness in the previous life. One has to admit they were quite well matched in that regard. I then glanced at Briar's abdomen. "Little sister, are you pregnant again?" Briar's face paled slightly as she stammered, "Yes, it's my choice. Might as well have more children while I'm young." Just then, Magnus walked over. Seeing Magnus approaching, I quickly turned and walked away. I don't know if it's just my imagination, but I keep feeling his sticky gaze fixed on me, making me extremely uncomfortable. "What's wrong? Do you like children?" "We could have one too," noticing my pale expression. Zephyr thought I was feeling envious and asked. My face flushed slightly. "I do like them, but let's consider this matter another time." The banquet began, and since Zephyr was the king of the sky, many people came to cozy up to him. We were soon separated by the crowd. This isn't much different from the drinking culture in the real world. Just as I was mentally complaining, a servant approached me, saying the Dragon Queen had a secret message for me and asked me to go to the backyard. Is she trying to say she was reborn? With doubts in my heart, I left the banquet and followed the attendant. When I reached the backyard, someone embraced me from behind. I would never forget this presence. It was the nightmare of my previous life. Magnus. My body couldn't help but start trembling. "Let me go." I couldn't break free from Magnus' powerful embrace at all. "Leona, why didn't you choose me this time?" Magnus held me even tighter. "What are you talking about? I don't understand." "You're my brother-in-law. Please behave yourself." I forced myself to stay calm. Magnus turned my body around, his large hands gripping my shoulders tightly, his sharp eagle-like gaze fixed on me. "Keep following me. How could a race like peacocks ever serve you properly?" I struggled against him desperately, my voice trembling with tears. "I don't know what you're talking about. Let me go." Seeing Magnus reminded me of my past life, where he toyed with me like a rag, and of myself becoming ugly and sickly from constant childbirth. "Stop pretending, Leona, you are always mine." A dark surge flashed in Magnus' eyes as he tried to bite my lips. "Wasn't it good when we lived together with a house full of children before?" I lifted my leg and rammed it straight into Magnus' stomach. Magnus winced in pain and immediately released me, looking at me with disbelief in his eyes. "Leona, you actually hurt me." I stepped back one pace at a time, my eyes filled with pure hatred as I stared at Magnus. Suddenly, a comforting presence appeared and pulled me into an embrace. "It's Zephyr." The tension in my heart finally eased, and I melted into Zephyr's embrace. Though Zephyr's expression remained cold, it filled me with immense peace. Zephyr lifted me into the air, glaring coldly at Magnus with an aura so dark it was terrifying. "Dragon King, you've crossed the line." Seeing the flash of killing intent in Zephyr's eyes, I knew he had murderous thoughts. This was exactly how he killed me in my previous life. Magnus watched as Zephyr held me, a shadow passing through his eyes. "Keep a close eye on your queen. Next time, she might just become mine." A cryptic smile played at the corners of Magnus' lips as he turned and walked away. Watching Zephyr's brows furrow and seeing magical energy coalesce in his hands, I immediately knew he intended to chase after and kill Magnus. I pressed down his magic-charged hand and shook my head at him. Only when he saw my expression did the murderous glint gradually fade from Zephyr's eyes. "The ocean is Magnus' domain. Even if we kill Magnus now, Zephyr and I would have great difficulty escaping from the sea." Then, Zephyr held me in his arms, ready to go home. Just at that moment, Briar walked over. "Sister, are you going back now?" Seeing Zephyr carefully holding me in his arms, a flash of jealousy crossed Briar's face, as if unable to believe that Zephyr would actually care for me so tenderly and treat me so well. "Yes, take good care of yourself." I nodded. Briar's tone turned slightly sour. "You two really are quite close, aren't you?" Just then, the vanished Magnus reappeared, a force pulling Briar back into his embrace. "Briar, let's go." Magnus' voice sounded somewhat displeased. Briar shrank slightly and obediently followed Magnus back to the banquet. It's obvious that Briar is terrified of Magnus, after all. He treats Briar just like he treated me in our past life. We're merely Magnus accessories, objects, anything but human beings. Only after returning to the Peacock clan did Zephyr finally set me down from his embrace. Seeing us return in such intimate closeness, the maids waiting at the entrance exchanged glances and secretly giggled. Zephyr's ears turned slightly red. I was charmed by Zephyr's cuteness and confidently held his hand as we entered the house. My lady. Please don't leave Sky alone from now on, Zephyr instructed. After all, Magnus has always been paranoid. If anything were to happen, I wouldn't be able to handle it alone. What I didn't expect was that Magnus was also reborn. If that's the case, could Zephyr be reborn too? But if he was reborn, from his perspective I must not be a good person, so why is he still so kind to me? I know why Magnus wants me back, because I'm highly fertile and can bear multiple children in one pregnancy. If Magnus discovers that Briar can only bear one child at a time, he would surely revoke all honors bestowed upon her and spare no effort to capture me back. Let's hope Briar can maintain Magnus' interest a little longer, but the truth is, Briar's second pregnancy still resulted in only one child. Magnus' fascination with Briar has completely faded. Briar gradually became Magnus' plaything. Briar pleaded for my help again, but after reading it, I silently burned the letter. I'm no saint. I won't save her a second time. Besides, if I go to the sea, I might end up imprisoned by Magnus. Since none of the letters Briar sent me received any response, Magnus issued a challenge from the ocean to the sky on behalf of the seas, saying either hand me over to Magnus, or prepare for war. After reading the challenge, Zephyr was nearly overflowing with anger, and with a darkened expression, commanded those below, tell the soldiers to prepare for battle. The war between sea and sky was on the verge of breaking out. I feel guilty in my heart. After all, the Great War in the previous life started because of me, and this life is also because of me. 5. War represents death. So other races in the sky who submitted to the Peacock sent letters opposing the war. They said since I'm just a human anyway, it would be better to hand me over to Magnus to avoid the sky being severely weakened by war. Zephyr disagreed and insisted on protecting me no matter what. The other races reluctantly agreed, but only sent their old, weak, sick, and disabled troops. It seems this battle is fraught with danger. To say I wasn't moved would be a lie. After spending so much time together, I had already fallen for Zephyr. Though I don't know if he likes me, I'm afraid he might get hurt, or even die. On the day Zephyr left for battle, my tears wouldn't stop flowing. Zephyr held me in his arms, wiped away my tears, and kissed my forehead reluctantly. Wait for me to return. I grabbed Zephyr's hand and said with a sob, "Can I go with you?" No. Zephyr refused me bluntly, then softened his tone as if afraid it was too harsh. He placed my hand on his face and said, "If I'm in danger, I'll use my life to send you to a safe place." What place? Your original world. Zephyr gazed at me affectionately. His eyes were beautiful, but I wasn't in the mood to appreciate them today. My tears began falling uncontrollably again as I held Zephyr tightly. You must come back alive. Though I don't understand how Zephyr has a method to send me back, I'd much rather have Zephyr live safely than trade their life for my return. I'm terrified, both of Zephyr dying and of being captured by Magnus again. But there's nothing I can do except be afraid. I'm just a human, weak and useless. Memories from my past life flooded before my eyes once again. It was Magnus' ferocious face, Magnus scrutinizing my distorted figure and face, calling me disgusting, and the unspeakable gynecological diseases I suffered from bearing too many children. Did Magnus love me? Of course not, yet he still enshrined me as queen, bestowing upon me countless honors. Just because he can't live without me, because I can give him the most offspring. He didn't treat me as a human being, never asked for my opinion, always forced me, even right after I gave birth. But Zephyr is different. He treats me well and respects me, though I don't know if his kindness is just out of respect for his wife. I still think Zephyr is an exceptionally good person. Falling for such an exceptionally good person is only natural, right? My lady, take care. Zephyr wiped away my tears once more, pulling me out of the painful memories. Zephyr gave me one last reluctant glance, handed me over to the maids behind him, and left without looking back. The maids held me firmly, preventing me from following Zephyr. I was back in the bedchamber. The usually comfortable bedchamber felt unusually cold to me today. Any news? I grabbed the maid at the door and asked. The maid shook her head. I felt somewhat desperate, but then remembered Zephyr once told me about a secret chamber containing some ancient manuals and treasures. Light gradually returned to my eyes as I walked toward the secret chamber. After rummaging through the chamber, I suddenly found a mirror with a notch that perfectly matched the half-jade pendant Zephyr had given me. My hands trembled as I placed the jade pendant onto it. The mirror gradually expanded, unfolding before my eyes like a screen. I saw it. It was Zephyr inside. He was fighting Magnus on land. Who would have thought? Magnus actually allied with the king of the land to attack the celestial clan. How shameless. Zephyr was at a complete disadvantage, already wounded. 6. Burning with anxiety, I touched the mirror and discovered I could actually pass through it. Without time to think, I saw Magnus attempting to ambush Zephyr from behind. I rushed in directly, shielding Zephyr from behind, blocking Magnus' heavy blow. I grunted and collapsed. My lady, Leona, two voices cried out simultaneously. Zephyr noticed me appearing behind him and hurriedly caught me. I kissed him directly and returned the beast core to Zephyr. Only with the beast core can Zephyr unleash his full strength. It's wonderful, as long as Zephyr is alive. In a hazy daze, I felt cold tears dripping onto my face as Zephyr held me tightly, sobbing uncontrollably. But it seems I'm about to die. My eyes gradually closed, and my body grew increasingly cold. When I opened my eyes again, warm sunlight bathed my face, and the familiar surroundings filled me with deep recognition. What's this? Am I back? Did Zephyr use his life to send me back? At this thought, tears streamed down my face again. That fool, I went through so much to save him. Sis, Mom's calling us for dinner. Briar walked into my room at that moment. Briar, she's back too. Seeing Briar, my face was full of wariness. Sis, what's with that expression? Hey, why are you crying? Briar looked at me in surprise. I observed her carefully for a while and, sensing nothing unusual, replied, got some sand in my eyes. Briar nodded and smiled at me, but the more I looked at that smile, the more eerie it seemed. Perhaps it was the psychological shadow from when she left me for dead in the orc world. Little sister, do you know Magnus and Zephyr? I couldn't help but ask. Of course I know them. My heart instantly leaped into my throat. The male lead in that novel I recommended to you has this exact name. And you said you weren't interested and hadn't read it, Briar continued, so it was from a novel after all. Maybe everything in the Beastman world was just a dream. Thinking of Zephyr, my heart suddenly feels somewhat empty. After finishing my meal quietly, I decided to go out for a walk. After all, I've experienced too much in the orc world and need some time to process it. Unexpectedly, on the largest screen in the central square, I saw that face I've been longing for day and night, Zephyr. I approached and saw the latest news about the richest person on top. The newest richest person was unmistakably Zephyr. Oh no, it might just be someone who looks like Zephyr. 7. I let out a self-deprecating laugh and lowered my eyes. Suddenly, a shadow fell over me. I looked up, my vision blurred by welling tears, making it hard to see clearly. All I could discern was that the person before me looked exactly like Zephyr. Zephyr, is this an illusion? I murmured. But the person in front of me pulled me straight into an embrace. It's not an illusion, my lady. I've come to find you. According to Zephyr, after my death, Magnus and Zephyr each expended half their magic to resurrect me and send me back to the original world, and Briar returned the very moment I came back. Time stood still in the real world, so it felt like I had just been dreaming. The land, sea, and air also regained peace after my death, as Magnus and Zephyr declared a ceasefire. Since then, Zephyr and Magnus desperately tried to find a way to reach my world, but their efforts were in vain, until one day, Zephyr remembered the mirror I used to visit him. He placed his half of the jade pendant on it and subsequently arrived in my world, but the blue planet was densely populated, so he could only position himself at the highest point. Believing I would see him and come find him. Are you stupid? I sobbed, leaning into Zephyr's embrace, my heart overflowing with sweetness. My lady, as I've said, our fates are intertwined. We shall never part for eternity. Zephyr held me, gazing at me as if beholding some long-lost treasure finally returned. Then I asked him again whether he knew about the reincarnation. He said he did know. That's right. All four of us have been reborn. Then why are you still so good to me? I asked, somewhat puzzled. Zephyr smiled gently and explained that after killing me in his previous life, he discovered it was Briar who had framed me. Filled with remorse, he decided to treat me well in this new life. But what he didn't expect was that he would genuinely fall in love with me. Were you this nice to Briar in your past life too? I suddenly felt a pang of jealousy. No, everything is uniquely yours. Zephyr explained in a flustered manner. Fine, I'll reluctantly forgive him, then. Zephyr and I got married again in this world. On our wedding night, as I was about to turn off the lights and sleep just like my previous marriage, Zephyr leaned over and pinned me beneath him. Is this okay? Zephyr's Adam's apple bobbed as desire colored his eyes. Huh, weren't you supposed to be cold-natured? My face burned crimson. Cold-natured doesn't mean sexually frigid. Zephyr chuckled softly before kissing me. Magnus' side story. I obtained a little human. Although she appeared with her sister, I noticed her at first glance. Fortunately, her sister chose the Peacock King, allowing me to have her, but my wife is expected to keep bearing children, though unwilling. It's tradition and I can't do anything about it. I didn't know she actually disliked this. Her constitution is special. She can bear multiple children in one pregnancy. She bore many children for me, but in doing so, she became ugly and fat. I admit, I don't love her as much anymore. But she is still my queen, and her children will still be the next rulers of my sea clan. So when she proposed to attack the celestial clan, I agreed, but she died at the hands of the Peacock King. Only then did I realize that I still loved her. Miraculously, it seems I've been reborn, and it appears I'm not the only one who was reborn, because she chose the Peacock King, while her younger sister came to me. I thought her sister could replace her in my heart. But I found her sister completely different from her. I still miss her. Seeing her again in the Peacock King's embrace filled me with unbearable jealousy toward him. I want to take her back, but she refuses. I know I treated her poorly in my past life, but I will change. So I started another war, trying to win her back, but I never thought it would kill her. If I had known, I would never have started the war. I joined forces with the Peacock King to resurrect her and send her back to her original world. I know she doesn't belong to this world, nor does she belong to me. I nodded. Zephyr side story. I never knew my wife would be such a promiscuous woman, even to the point of being caught in bed with another man. I locked her up, but suddenly heard that the Sea Tribe was about to wage war against me. I went to battle, only to receive her distant message saying her sister was forcibly taking her away. Though I have no feelings for this wife in name, I still feel responsible for her. I rushed over and killed her sister with a single strike, but only then did I realize that my wife had framed her sister. Her sister had been deceived. I was filled with regret, yet somehow I was reborn, and this time, the girl I had killed became my wife. At first, I was nice to her just out of guilt, but later I realized she was different from her sister, gentle, considerate, and kind. I seem to be growing more and more dependent on her. I think I've genuinely fallen for her. I knew she wasn't from this world, so I began searching for a way to help her return home, but then I learned that I would have to sacrifice my own life to send her back. I do not fear death. I just fear that I will never see her again. The Sea Tribe, just like in my previous life, declared war on me and even targeted my wife. Of course, I had to fight back, but why was she so foolish? Sacrificing her own life for me. The Dragon King also looked incredulous. The war stopped the moment my wife died. A life for a life. Just as I was about to use my own life to revive her and send her home, the Dragon King stopped me. The two of us each exhausted half our magic power to send her home. But after that, my longing for her only grew stronger. I want to see her, to go to her world and find her. I tried every possible method, but nothing worked. 8. Suddenly I remembered that day during the war, the image of her descending from the sky, so I also found that mirror and placed the jade pendant on it. I've truly entered her world, but the timing was several months too early. This world is too crowded. Finding her is like searching for a needle in a haystack. Then let me make myself shine brightly, so she can see me and know I've come looking for her. On the day she woke up, I waited eagerly. Sure enough, she appeared, with a nervous heart. I stood before her as she rushed into my arms in tears. Leona, I've missed you so much. So are you. Story 2. After the zombie virus broke out, my sister and I found 2 crystal cores. Between the metal ability and the healing ability, she took the lead in choosing the more powerful former, and I was forced to choose the healing ability when she led the team to search for supplies. I was enjoying the air conditioning in the medical station of the base. When she was fighting in the sea of corpses and blood, I was sleeping in the arms of the base leader. Her clothes were stained with blood and brains, while I was always dressed in a white robe, spotless. In the end, I was pushed off the city wall by her and was devoured by the zombies. When I opened my eyes again, my sister and I were reborn on the day when we chose our abilities. She took the lead in choosing the healing ability. It's my turn to enjoy the good life this time. I smiled and said nothing. 01. Wait a minute, I take it back. I want the healing ability. Just as I was about to get the pure white crystal core representing the healing ability, my sister suddenly changed her mind. I knew that she was reborn too, but it seemed that she didn't know that I was reborn as well. It was the second day after the zombie outbreak, and we found the body of a researcher in the corridor of the apartment. The body was already cold, and there was a damaged password box next to it. We tiptoed and carried the box back to the shared house, and opened it effortlessly. Inside were 2 crystal cores, 1 gold and 1 white. There were small words next to them that read metal and healing. In the previous life, my sister firmly believed that the metal ability was definitely powerful, and having it was equivalent to getting the script of the leading lady in the apocalypse, so she left the healing ability, which had no offensive power, to me, and she called it protection for me. But when I became the so-called little princess of the base, she was unwilling to fight the zombies all day long. The milk that she could only afford after going on several missions, I could easily get just by moving my fingers. Even Arthur, the leader of the base, became my admirer. Such a huge disparity in treatment finally shattered her hypocritical facade. Rory, why do you deserve all this? I've risked my life for the base countless times. Clearly, I've made a greater contribution to the base. Why do you get the leader's favor? In fact, I didn't have a good life, and I disdained anyone's favor. My sister and I were both orphans and had depended on each other since we were children, so I instinctively wanted to explain, but the person in front of me had been carried away by the anger of jealousy, and my tragic death was the most satisfying way for her to vent her anger, in the end. My own sister didn't hesitate to push me off the high wall of the base. Outside the high wall, there were continuous roars and dense zombies. The fear came before the pain, then came the intense pain as my limbs and all the skin on my body were gnawed on. If I could do it all over again, I would definitely drag her to hell with me. 02. When I opened my eyes again, my sister and I were reborn on the day when we chose our abilities. I lowered my head and recalled the experiences of my previous life. And I didn't respond to her request for the healing ability for a moment, but she mistakenly thought that I didn't want to give it to her. This made her even more convinced that the healing ability was a rare and good thing, so without saying a word, she rushed towards me excitedly, snatched the crystal core and swallowed it directly. It's my turn to enjoy the good life this time. You just wait to deal with those disgusting things every day. Feeling disgusted, I shrank away from her. Avoiding her touch, there was only one golden crystal core left in the box. That was the power that I had yearned for in my previous life. Seeing that I didn't take it immediately, Nova's expression became even more triumphant. Don't worry, sister, when I become a famous person in the base, I will definitely take good care of you. She gritted her teeth and squeezed out the words, take good care of. And her wide-open eyes seemed to want to devour me alive. So what if she was reborn? My silly sister was as stupid and selfish as ever. I looked submissive and said, then I'll have to trouble you, sister, we have plenty of time ahead. 03. The next morning, Nova was still in her dreams, but I opened my eyes. I took out the golden crystal core that I hadn't taken yet. It sparkled with a sharp luster in the sunlight. At first glance, it looked no different from the day before. But if you compared it carefully, you could find that the transparent film that originally wrapped around the outside of the crystal core had disappeared. This layer of film was almost integrated with the crystal core itself, and it was very difficult for ordinary people to notice anything unusual. If I hadn't known the inside story in advance because of my rebirth, I'm afraid I would have made the same mistake again. At that time, I was regarded as a mobile human medical tool, treating the wounded day and night, regardless of the weather, until my ability was exhausted, then recovered, and exhausted again. Using my ability a lot made my ability level rise rapidly, and I gradually discovered the problem in my ability. Every time I used my ability one more time, I could feel the failure of my internal organs more clearly. Later, I learned that in order to prevent others from stealing the crystal core, the researchers added a colorless and odorless poisonous film to the surface of the crystal core. There was no problem with contact, but taking it directly would lead to severe poisoning. As the ability was continuously used and developed, the toxicity would appear and gradually increase. There was no cure, and it would only end with death. But the method to dissolve this layer of film was incredibly simple. Just melt it with body temperature. It is said that it was provided for the high-level people to deal with emergencies. It's really thoughtful. Yesterday, Nova swallowed the crystal core directly. Her death was just a matter of time. I carefully wiped the crystal core through a cloth. Only after confirming that there was no danger at all did I swallow it. The seemingly hard crystal core melted as soon as it entered my mouth. Immediately, a warm current flowed through my limbs, and along with it came a significant improvement in my perception. I closed my eyes and felt the changes in my body. When I opened my eyes again, I could already see the faintly flowing golden light in the air. I stretched out my hand and concentrated. Slowly, a metal needle cone with a bulging middle and pointed ends took shape in my palm. With a change of my consciousness, the metal cone immediately turned into golden dots and melted into the air. As the zombie virus swept across the world, the environment of the earth was also changing drastically. Metal elements began to appear in the air. As the proficiency of the metal ability increased, ability users could even freely control the metal elements in the human body in the later stage. This was no different from a walking human killing weapon. The base regularly drew the blood of ability users every month, calling it a physical examination, but in fact, it was to monitor the degree of ability users' mastery of their abilities. When the integration degree reached a dangerous value, the base would assassinate the ability users in the name of cleaning up. I'm afraid this is also the reason why Nova worked so hard to kill zombies but never got any benefits. They were afraid. No leader likes something that is out of control, especially something that can threaten themselves. What's more, in the apocalypse, everyone is in danger, and human nature has long been destroyed along with the brilliant urban civilization. I got up and stood by the window, lifting a corner of the curtain. If there were no accidents, Arthur was already on his way. 04. Under the shadow of my previous life, I woke up very early. I sat quietly by the side, looking at my sister's sleeping appearance. Under my creepy gaze, Nova suddenly woke up with a start. She swallowed, and then became angry and ashamed because she was scared by me. The healing ability is already mine. It's no use for you to daydream anymore. Oh, I don't want it at all. My indifferent attitude aroused her dissatisfaction. Before her sharp and piercing voice could penetrate the wall, I kindly pointed in the direction of the window. There were quite a few zombies downstairs, and that shout was no different from the dining hall's meal bell. But she seemed to have misunderstood something. She gave me a glare and then quickly got up from the bed. She piled all the few clothes she had from the wardrobe onto the bed. Then she tried on the clothes one by one in front of the mirror, so she remembered Arthur. When Arthur met us in the previous life, he already had an ability, but after all, he couldn't withstand the zombie sea tactics. The other side had a large number of zombies, and his ability was quickly exhausted. He also suffered a lot of injuries during his escape. However, his ability was fire, which was different from ours. Ours were activated through artificial crystal cores. They were unique. There was only one healing ability user in the world, and there was also only one metal ability user, and he awakened his ability after being infected with the zombie virus. Yes, there was a certain chance of awakening an ability after being infected with the zombie virus. Therefore, many crazy people went forward one after another. They didn't want to be subservient anymore. And they didn't want to live in humiliation. They shouted that it was better to take a gamble than to live a cowardly life. In the end, most of these people became members of the zombie army. While thinking, Nova finally chose her clothes. After hesitating for a while, she said, "Sister, let's go out and find food quickly." In the previous life, when my sister and I went out to look for food, we accidentally saved Arthur, who was being chased by zombies. Of course, my sister wanted to go alone, so that she could monopolize the favor of the future base leader. She could do that in the previous life, but now she had to drag me along, because the person who now had the powerful metal ability was me. 05. There was a medium-sized supermarket near the apartment. It was located in a remote area with sparse traffic, so it became our first choice in the previous life. It was also there that we saved Arthur. The journey was very smooth, and we hardly had a direct confrontation with the zombies. Nova hid behind me the whole time, like a quail. She was even almost scared to scream by a severed leg. I quickly grabbed a piece of clothing fragment from the ground and stuffed it into her mouth. I said in an unfriendly tone, "If you want to die, go far away, don't drag me into it." I had thought that she would be useless without an offensive ability, but I didn't expect her to be this useless. After entering the supermarket, I quietly used my ability to turn into a cone and penetrate the zombie's head. Then I turned the cone back into little dots of elemental light and let it dissipate in the air. After clearing the zombies, I took the lead in going to the daily necessities area and getting a waterproof mountaineering bag. I was choosing medicines, and she was looking out at the door, waiting for Arthur. I was searching for food, and she changed her posture of looking out. When I carried the bag on my back and was ready to return, she had already changed into her seventh posture that she thought was attractive. "What a fool," I said. "It seems that he won't come. I'm leaving first." "Do as you like." She ignored me. I was speechless and turned around directly. The next second, a figure fleeing in a panic was running towards the supermarket in the distance. There were also quite a few zombies following behind. TSK, what bad luck. Arthur wasn't a good person, but I couldn't let him die so easily either. When he was about to be caught up, I silently turned into a silver needle and pierced the head of the zombie closest to him. When he gradually distanced himself from the danger behind him, I created a metal ball on the ground to make him fall. By the time he reached the supermarket, I had already killed most of the zombies behind him. Seeing that there was no danger, Nova, who had been pretending to be dead, suddenly jumped out to fawn on him. It was so scary. "Fortunately, you're okay. Let me help you treat your injuries." She used her healing ability to cure most of Arthur's injuries. The man's eyes immediately sparkled with amazement. There was an obscure look in the depths of his eyes. After Arthur expressed his gratitude to her, he turned to me instead and asked if it was me who had killed the zombies just now. Seeing that the attention was diverted, Nova gave me a vicious look. I chuckled and denied it. No, maybe it was a ghost. This denial was exactly what my sister wanted. She quickly echoed that there should be someone passing by and doing a good deed out of righteousness. She also especially emphasized that her sister was just an ordinary person without the slightest strength, without any ability. Under her enthusiastic invitation, Arthur, seemingly passively but actually actively, followed us back to the apartment. "My dear sister, you've just invited a wolf into the house. In the previous life, the number of people he had killed was much more than the zombies you killed." 06. At this time, the small apartment was divided into two spaces. With his tall and handsome appearance and his subtle and ambiguous tone, Arthur quickly coaxed Nova so much that she lost her sense of direction, just like how he had deceived me in the previous life. The two of them were snuggling up on one side of the room as if no one else was around. My sister would occasionally throw me a provocative look. When I took out the food from the backpack, she suddenly froze. Yes, she could only see the man in her eyes. How could she remember that the original purpose of going to the supermarket was to get supplies? Leaning in Arthur's arms, she ordered haughtily, "Rory, why are you so selfish? Do you want to eat all the food by yourself?" Although Arthur frowned, he still said gently, "Rory, it doesn't matter if you don't like me. Nova is after all your own sister. You can't just watch your sister starve to death, can you? It's so disgusting to hear him call like that. You both have abilities. If you don't want to starve to death, go find food yourself." I casually pointed in the direction of the door, too lazy to pay attention to these two immoral people. I ate the compressed biscuits in my hand on my own. The crunching sound when I bit them was particularly harsh in the silence. Just as Nova was angry and about to come and snatch the food, roars suddenly came from all directions. We were surrounded by zombies, but in a short while, the sound disappeared without a trace, as if nothing had happened. Knock, knock, knock. There was a rhythmic knocking sound outside the door. I slowed down my breathing and stared intently in the direction of the door, not daring to relax for a moment. Surely a very powerful ability user has come and solved all the zombies. Nova was both surprised and delighted. Before I could stop her, she had already opened the door. Outside the door stood a young man in white. His soft short hair was neatly attached to his forehead, and his pair of dark eyes were bottomless. When he saw her looking over, the young man smiled slightly, and his sculpted features immediately came to life. "I passed by here just now and noticed that there were survivors, so I helped you get rid of all the zombies. I wonder if I could stay here for one night." He deliberately emphasized the pronunciation of the words, with a hint of hoarseness, more like a smile, or a coax. Nova's ears suddenly turned red, and she affably invited him in. I narrowed my eyes and took an imperceptible step back, trying my best to reduce my presence, but the man turned around and walked towards me, slowly extending his hand. "Hello, sister, I'm Adrian." Before I could react, Nova couldn't wait to take his hand. She said in an affected manner, "Hello, little brother. My name is Nova, and my ability is healing." I curled my lips into a faint smile and raised my eyes to look at Arthur, who was being ignored beside us. His face looked even uglier than mine. It seemed that he had already recognized the identity of the young man in front of him. As for my elder sister, she might as well have written the word "like" on her face. Adrian forced a smile in response, but his gaze remained fixed on me. Finally, Nova couldn't hold back any longer. "Let me introduce my younger sister to you." Oops, she hurried towards me but accidentally tripped, and a flash of light came from her sleeve. It was something she had secretly picked up from the ground when she was out, and it was stained with zombie blood. Even if it made a tiny wound on the body of an ability user, that person would immediately become one of those disgusting creatures. 1 second before she pounced on me, a cold voice sounded, "What dirty hands, 07. Adrian wiped his hands on the curtain as if in disgust. Beside him was Nova, whose right hand had been broken. Adrian placed his slender index finger against his lips. "Shh, be quiet." Nova was so frightened that she was stunned. After choking a few times, she finally didn't dare to cry out loud. She bit her lower lip tightly and cast a pleading look at Arthur. Arthur hesitated for a moment, but thinking that she had the healing ability, he decided to stand in front of her. Burning flames ignited in his palm and were aimed at Adrian, but Adrian seemed not to hear it. Instead, he walked towards me step by step. I stood still where I was. When our eyes met, behind my calm gaze was an unfathomable undercurrent. With every step he took, the growls around us became louder. Before I knew it, the streets and corridors were already crowded with densely packed zombies. I had seen him before, in the deepest room in the basement of the medical station in my previous life. There was a person trapped by iron chains as thick as an arm. Later, he became the zombie king. It seemed that he had also been reborn. According to the progress in my previous life, Adrian was still a human ability user at this time, but he was being hunted down by the human high-ups because of his special ability. Since he became the zombie king ahead of time this time, something must have gone wrong. The crashing down of the door panel interrupted my thoughts, before the zombies rushed in. I decisively broke the window, and Adrian jumped out first. Behind me, Nova was screaming and cursing like a madwoman. "Rory, are you crazy? Hurry up and come over to help block the door." I raised a bright and sarcastic smile. "Don't worry, sister, you're a healing ability user. You're not that easy to die. Living is much scarier than dying." After saying that, I jumped without looking back. "Little zombie, catch sister steadily." 08, Adrian's figure was as fast as lightning. He gathered his strength and jumped, and firmly caught me in his arms. I wanted to get down and walk by myself, but he held me down firmly. "Sister, after not seeing each other for so long, have you missed me?" He leaned pitifully in front of me, but there was a hint of cunning in his eyes that couldn't be hidden. I was helpless. "Let me down." The day before I died in my previous life was the last time I saw him. The next day, he successfully broke free from his imprisonment and escaped. The base was in chaos, and I was also tied to the city wall by Nova during the chaos. Logically speaking, it seemed that his unintentional actions had also contributed to my death. He bit his lower lip, looking very wronged. It seems that sister doesn't want to see me, then I'll just leave now. As he said that, he was about to put me down, but I suddenly hugged him even tighter, which was unusual for me, because at the moment when we were about to land, the originally quiet zombies suddenly stared at me menacingly. Adrian proudly lifted me up a little and swaggered through the crowd of zombies while holding me in his arms. He was as leisurely as if he were going for a stroll. Under the shocked gazes of the two people upstairs, we gradually walked away. My encounter with Adrian was purely accidental. When I was exploring around the medical station that day, I discovered his presence. Humans created the zombie virus and, on this basis, extracted crystal nuclei containing abilities. Essentially, the abilities awakened by the virus were no different from the abilities artificially extracted. Therefore, I keenly sensed that, like me, he also had the ability in the aspect of healing. I poked his delicate and bloodless face. Hey, you are also locked up because of your healing ability, right? He lazily lifted his eyelids, and a pair of long and narrow peach blossom eyes glanced at me for a moment before closing again. He was quite good-looking, but he had a bit of a bad temper. I didn't give up and poked his face on the other side. You look younger than me. I'll call you little brother. Little brother, what did you do wrong to be beaten like this? If you're obedient like sister, you can avoid a lot of suffering. Finally, he was so annoyed by me that he bared his teeth at me. My ability is regeneration. Anyone who gets close to me doesn't live long. I advise you to get as far away as possible. He was like a small animal whose tail had been stepped on. Perhaps it was the mutual understanding and sympathy between healing ability users. Since then, I would always find an opportunity to sneak in and visit him. Sometimes I brought a steamed bun and a glass of milk, and sometimes I brought a flower. Of course, there were also times when I went empty-handed, and I would just tell him about what happened outside. From the initial mind your own business to later calling me sister all the time. Slowly, I became more and more familiar with Adrian. I also learned from him about his tragic experiences. Unlike me, his regeneration ability was passive. He couldn't output his ability like I could, but he could make himself immortal, even if only his head was left. Adrian could regrow a complete body. Because of this, his flesh and blood were supplied to the human high-ups to fulfill their dream of eternal life. Ordinary ability users couldn't be infected with the zombie virus for the second time, otherwise they would completely mutate. But Adrian was different. He had a strong resistance to the virus. So the high-ups injected the virus into his body many times to promote the research of the vaccine. Unfortunately, he didn't make it through, in the end. He became the zombie king, half human and half zombie. Those greedy people were always like this, trying to control everything that couldn't be controlled. In the end, they could only reap what they had sown. 09. The once glorious city cluster now only had one building in the city center still standing. In the presidential suite on the top floor, Adrian and I sat facing each other. He called a few zombie minions to bring a basket of fruits, and he picked an apple from it and started peeling it. Sister, now that I've become the zombie king, I'm not afraid of being caught by them. As he said that, he proudly raised his chin, as if waiting for my praise. I rubbed the center of my brows. So you deliberately turned yourself into this neither human nor ghost state. He nodded like a puppy, as if there was a fluffy big tail behind him wagging excitedly. I frowned even deeper. Didn't you think about what would happen if you failed? What would happen if you completely turned into a mindless zombie? After hearing what I said, the light in his eyes became even brighter, and he happily moved closer to me. Is sister caring about me? I felt exhausted, seeing that my face was gradually turning ugly. Adrian became serious in an instant. I was wrong. I promise I won't do it again. How about sister? You hit me. He spoke sincerely. But he didn't stop making small movements. He was almost leaning against me. I sighed, pushed his head away, and then took the apple from his hand. I quickly stuffed it into his mouth. Under his mournful gaze, I lovingly rubbed his hair to comfort him. The next second, my face became serious again. Since we've been given a second chance at life, we must never repeat the same mistakes. It's time to get rid of those scumbags who don't deserve to be human. Those scumbags referred to the high-ups in the Dawn base, including Arthur. Dawn, what an ironic name. They developed the zombie virus under the banner of human evolution and the elimination of the weak, but before the vaccine was successfully developed, the virus got out of control, so they decided to conduct experiments on living people. The people who disappeared inexplicably in the base were all locked in the basement of the medical station and voluntarily sacrificed themselves for the future of humanity. The air conditioner that was always on in the station was to reduce the activity of the virus. Similarly, the movement of zombies would also be restricted in a low-temperature environment, but more importantly, it was to slow down the decay rate of the corpses. Yes, in the eyes of the high-ups, even dead experimental subjects had value. The experimental subjects wouldn't be freed until the last bit of their value was squeezed out. Their final destination was the stomachs of the zombies. Surprised, aren't you? But this is human nature. It wasn't the end of the world that destroyed human nature. It was human nature that nurtured the end of the world. 10. The bloody memories replayed in my mind over and over again, and Adrian's face also darkened. He took out the apple from his mouth. Sister, we must never let those people go. Whatever you want to do, I'll cooperate with you. The first thing to do next was to enhance my ability. Only when I was strong myself could I have the right to speak and not be at the mercy of others. Adrian cooperatively called a large group of zombie minions, old and young, some missing arms and legs, all kinds, but as soon as they saw me, they all stood still like puppets. I was going to practice actual combat, not hit wooden stakes. After giving Adrian a good lecture, he became much more obedient, although the movement speed of the zombies was still much slower than normal. It was barely acceptable. Adrian came to watch my training every day, and he stuck to me like a piece of chewing gum and couldn't be driven away. In desperation, I had to let him be. After 2 months of devil training, I had already mastered the metal ability to a great extent. Without reaching out my hand, I could conjure up dozens of silver needles just by using my mental power. My perception of metal objects within a few miles around me had also reached the limit, and I could manipulate their movement and shape at will. I could even construct a completely enclosed metal space. Adrian cheered loudly from the side. I patted his head with satisfaction. Silly boy, leave all the brainwork to sister in the future. You just find a shady place to stay, so as not to be noticed by them. He nodded solemnly. Then, the next day, when I was looking for a car in the city, I didn't encounter a single zombie along the way. On the third day, when I was about to drive out of the city, a group of zombies suddenly appeared. They didn't want to bite me, they just simply blocked my way. I quickly and cleanly cleared the roadblocks. On the 7th day, in front of the base gate, I saw a familiar figure among the people queuing up to enter the base. Sure enough, taking advantage of the inattentiveness of the armed personnel checking at the gate, I grabbed his ear and quickly dragged him to an inconspicuous corner. It hurts, it hurts. Adrian looked at me with tears in his eyes, and his eyes were red all around. I sneered but also let go of my hand. Stop pretending. Zombies don't have the sense of pain. Seeing that his act of feigning injury had been exposed, he had to hold back his tears, but the word aggrieved might as well have been written on his face. I supported my forehead and sighed. I didn't want you to come for your own good. Those people have been looking for you. I'm afraid you won't even be able to pass the security check on the first floor of the base. It was simply like delivering oneself to the enemy from 1,000 miles away. The gift was small, but the thought was deep. But I didn't say it out loud for fear of hurting his self-esteem. He pouted but still refused to give in. What if that person does something bad to sister again? I'm afraid I won't be able to save you in time. Which person? I was puzzled for a second and then immediately realized the kid was jealous. You mean that beast Arthur? Don't worry, I won't even let him touch a single hair of mine. What if he does touch you? Then I'll chop it off. After much persuasion, I finally sent this ancestor away. Since I had never revealed my ability in front of Arthur, he wouldn't search for my whereabouts in a big way for the time being. I entered the base unimpeded. I hadn't walked a few steps when I met someone I knew. It really was a narrow path for enemies. 11. Before the other person noticed me, I quickly covered half of my face with a face towel and quickly blended into the crowd. Nova, dressed in a white dress, passed by me. It hadn't been long, and she was already as thin as a skeleton, as if a gust of wind could blow her away. Behind her was a large group of strong and sturdy bodyguards, which formed a sharp contrast. Because of the improvement of my ability, I could clearly distinguish the difference between ordinary people and ability users. Those were not ordinary ability users. Although my actions were restricted in my previous life, Arthur had never assigned so many people to supervise me at the same time. My ability to know the situation had earned me a lot of freedom from him. It seemed that during the few months I was away, my dear sister had probably done a lot of stupid things. Stop dawdling. Hurry up. If the leader punishes us for being late later, we won't get any benefits, and we won't make it easy for you either. One of the big men pushed Nova, who was still choosing fruits at the fruit stall, viciously. What are you choosing? Don't think you're superior just because you're with the leader. What's so great about the healing ability? You still have to be locked up and used for experiments. Sarcasm, abuse, disdain, contempt, humiliation. Sister, this is what I have suffered. And now it's your turn. I wonder how you feel now. You must be very happy to have Arthur's favor as you wished. I didn't waste any more time and decisively turned around and walked towards the dilapidated alley. The person behind me was roughly pushed to the ground, while my steps were brisk and light. We all have our own futures, sister. Open your eyes and take a good look. This is how the most powerful ability in the apocalypse is used. 12. It was still quite bright when I arrived, which was not conducive to sneaking around, so I wandered around the alleys where the poor lived for a long time, waiting for the night to fall. This was the area with the weakest supervision in the entire base. Most of the people living here were ordinary people without power or influence, mostly the elderly, children, or those with disabilities, but it was rare to see young and strong men and young women. Most of the former had become bait to attract zombies, losing their lives in the bellies of the zombies, or had been pressed into service as conscripts, doing the hardest and most tiring work in the base. Those who were unlucky became experimental subjects, unable to live and unable to die. As for young women, their fate was no better than Nova's. The beautiful ones were raped, and those who were not good-looking were dragged away to do manual labor. Their final destination was, without exception, the herd of zombies, to facilitate research. The people above had deliberately raised a group of zombies, specifically for experiments. At the same time, in order to better maintain the activity of the zombies, it was necessary to continuously provide fresh flesh and blood. Thus, there were continuous disappearances of people. Perhaps some people had already noticed something was wrong, but so what? The sun still rose as usual, before the darkness eroded them. They pretended that everything was bright. Everyone was deceiving themselves. I simulated the action route in my mind over and over again, until I was sure there were no mistakes. The thick night had already shrouded the entire land. In my previous life, I had tried to escape, so I secretly memorized the range of all the surveillance cameras in the base, but my ability was too weak, and with the toxicity taking effect, I had to give up. This time, I successfully avoided the inspections of all the informants and managed to sneak into Arthur's room. He was very perceptive and regained consciousness immediately, even though he was in a state of sleep. Unfortunately, in a battle, a single second could mean the difference between life and death. "It's you, Jean." He was too late. I controlled the blade to cut off his tongue to prevent his cries from attracting unnecessary trouble. At the same time, I conjured up 4 metal cones as thick as a calf's leg and nailed him to the bedboard. I completely severed his tendons in his hands and feet. I put my hand to my mouth. "Shoo, if you beg for mercy, I'll be even harsher. When those innocent people knelt down and begged you not to use them for experiments, did you show any mercy?" Arthur stared at me like a madman, his whole body shaking violently, and he even lost control of his bladder and bowels. Look, whether it's the victim or the perpetrator, when faced with a threat to their lives, their subconscious reactions are the same. The villain holding the butcher's knife is also a coward who is fierce on the outside but weak on the inside. There was a smile on the corner of my mouth. "By the way, I am indeed a metal ability user. Congratulations, you guessed right. So what reward should I give you? How about calling a little friend to liven things up?" After saying that, I opened the window of his bedroom, and a zombie eagle flew in from outside. While I was improving my ability, Adrian wasn't idle either. He had developed his mental power to a very high level and could now control all things infected by the virus at will. When he wasn't by my side, it was through this eagle that we communicated with each other. I stretched out my hand, and the zombie eagle docilely retracted its claws and stood obediently on my left arm. "You've had a hard journey. Now it's time for a meal." As soon as the words fell, the zombie eagle immediately regained its cruel and bloodthirsty nature and launched a one-sided massacre against Arthur on the bed. After the buffet was over, only a large black hole was left on his chest. He lay on the bed, barely breathing, with more air going in than coming out. But I am a cautious person. After confirming that he had no more breath, I specifically cut off his head and let the zombie eagle carry it back and play with it like a ball. "Sister, it'll be your turn soon." 13. I entered Nova's room through the window. She didn't even lock the window, which saved me the trouble of breaking it by force. A crescent moon hung in the sky, casting a silver light. There was a figure sitting upright on the bed. "You know everything, don't you?" Nova spoke as if she was calm, but in fact, she was on the verge of collapse. "Of course, sister, you insisted on swapping with me. Why are you regretting it now?" I raised an eyebrow. Tears instantly welled up in her eyes and slowly slid down her gaunt face. "Sister, since you can come here, you must be able to save me out, right?" She stared at me, holding on to her last hope. I nodded slightly. She moved back slightly, almost imperceptibly, and continued to pour out her grievances to me. I leaned against the wall boredly, crossing my arms. Before she could press the button, I moved behind her like a ghost. At the same time, I cut off her tongue in both hands. This button looks very familiar. How about you tell me what it's for, sister? I asked with a fake smile. Even in this situation, my sister still wouldn't let me go. In my previous life, when I was planning to escape once, I accidentally pressed this button. Once pressed, impenetrable isolation walls would rise at all the entrances and exits of this room, trapping people inside and killing them. By then, when the support from the high-ups arrived, there would be no way to escape even with wings. As sisters connected by blood, I knew my sister too well. She and I had already reached the point where one of us had to die. Don't worry, Arthur has already gone down first. You'll soon go down to accompany him. By the way, do you know why he, as a high-up, appeared near the apartment? I leaned close to her ear and said word by word. Because he was hunting down the person who stole the crystal core, and from the first moment you saw him, you revealed your ability. Nova stared at me in disbelief, with tears, snot, and thick blood smearing all over her face. She sat down on the ground, laughing and crying, as if mocking herself. She had lost to me again. I squatted down and looked her in the eye. Sister, do you know why you lost? Because you only care about yourself. You're too self-righteous, sister. You're too arrogant. You thought that with the healing ability that everyone supported, you could have everything. But you didn't know that in the apocalypse, the only way to survive was to hold the knife in your own hand. Instead of dealing with her directly, I handcuffed her to the balcony. You're no different from those beasts in human skin, sister. Watch carefully. This is how an ability should be used. 14. I covered the entire base with my consciousness, one after another. Metal cages rose up in the residences of the high-ups in the base, the medical station, and the gathering place of ability users. They glistened with a cold luster under the merciless moonlight. According to my memory from my previous life, the bottommost layer of the basement of the medical station was a zombie pit, where the zombies were kept. To strengthen the defense, the entire medical station was built with metal, which happened to provide me with great convenience. I slowly stretched out my hand. The buildings of the medical station above the ground were all uprooted and floated in the air. The frontline wounded were living there. Then I gathered my strength into a fist, and the metal partitions between the underground building floors instantly decomposed. The researchers inside fell straight to the bottommost layer and became the zombies' food. For a moment, cries of pain filled the air. After I dealt with the zombies in the pit, Adrian also arrived in time. I curled my lips into a smile. You're just in time. There were still some high-ups that needed to be dealt with. The wealthy area of the base, the commotion just now had woken everyone up. Under the protection of fully armed soldiers, those pot-bellied high-ranking personnel were hurriedly evacuating. I raised my hand, and the gun barrels that were originally aimed at me and Adrian instantly turned in the opposite direction. All the lackeys who were helping the evildoers were shot in the head. One of the high-ups recognized Adrian and his eyes were filled with greed. No matter who it is, as long as you catch him, you'll be rewarded with 100 crystal cores. Instantly, the wind of a fist blew past my ear. The next moment, screams rang out one after another. The zombie eagle that was originally hidden in the night revealed its true appearance. I protected Adrian behind me, and the scene in front of me was like a purgatory. When some of the high-ups were about to escape from the chaotic crowd, metal walls rose up from the ground, cutting off all the remaining people's hope of survival. Half an hour later, there were white bones everywhere. I stretched out my hand again, and all the metal cages instantly disappeared. When I went to the balcony again, Nova was already dead. The biggest cancer had been eradicated, and there was only one last thing left: eliminate all the zombies, and also, deal with myself. 15. 2 months later, the Dawn Base. Oh no. It should be called the Happy Base now. There was a new human leader there. It didn't matter who it was, and I didn't care either. In a way, having experienced 2 lives, I could be considered indifferent. I didn't have a strong sense of identity or belonging to any specific human base. All I did was just because my morality was intermittently noble. Some humans were disappointing, but the human race didn't deserve to be exterminated. On a sunny morning, I sent an invitation letter to all the human bases, inviting them to witness my death. A tree that stands out in the forest is sure to be struck by the wind. In the past 2 months, the human bases had extended an olive branch to me again and again, hoping to restart the research on the virus and abilities to save all of humanity. I refused all of them, and as expected, I was hunted down. Only by dying without a burial place in front of them could they completely give up. So that there wouldn't be a second Dawn Base, there were many people who came to observe. And among them were those who still wanted to win me over. There was a steep cliff, and below was the churning and roaring magma. Under the eyes of everyone, I unleashing power like crazy. Roar. Actually, I hadn't been doing well, and I disdained anyone's favor. People have the tendency to flock to the strong, and zombies are the same. Plus, the virus and abilities originally came from the same source. Therefore, the stronger the ability, the more attractive it is to zombies. I stood on the edge of the cliff, my eyes blurred by the hot air blowing up from below. I jumped off, then a figure rushed over in a hurry and jumped down without hesitation. There was a huge crashing sound in the magma, and sparks flew everywhere. With the mental control of the Zombie King, the zombies all over the world seemed to be greatly summoned and rushed here like crazy one after another. Then they fell into the boiling magma one by one and disappeared without a trace, until the last zombie on Earth fell into the magma. Thus, the zombie crisis was completely over. 16. Extra story. The process of falling was much longer than I had imagined. Countless splashing magma and rock debris were flying in the air. I was just about to activate my ability when I was startled by the person who suddenly appeared in front of me. It was Adrian. Before taking action, I told him the whole plan of faking my death. The Zombie King desired abilities more than ordinary zombies. I even locked him up on purpose to prevent him from jumping down with me. I'm also a zombie, sister. Don't be soft-hearted. A sigh fell. An airtight metal ball wrapped the two of them tightly. Just as they were about to touch the surface of the magma, it stopped.